Good morning. The August 19th, 2026 meeting of the Board of Estimates is now called to order. The board continues to meet in a hybrid format. For those here in person, please take a moment to silence your cell phones and other electronic devices. For those attending virtually, if you desire an opportunity to speak, we ask that you please keep yourself on mute until the chair recognizes you. When you are called upon, please announce your name and organization and speak loudly and clearly as you present. I will start by recognizing Comptroller Henry, who is a very, very special guest in the House.
Thank you, Mr. President. Good morning.
Good morning.
Thank you. I just want to take a moment to introduce a young man and embarrass him terribly by making him stand up and wave at everybody. This is Braden Slow. Braden is a rising freshman at Connections Academy. He works with the group Unified Efforts in Penn North that's been doing out-of-school time and after-school programs for years and doing an incredible job at it. Braden is the very first comptroller for a day. And so he is here to see just how incredibly exciting being comptroller of Baltimore City can be. And that's why we were so glad that we got a Board of Estimates meeting with not one, not two, but 3 audit-based conversations so that he could see the real level of depth and detail that the comptroller's office likes to bring to city government. So if I can just make this announcement at the beginning, everybody, when you come up to the microphone, please announce who you are, name and title. Even though we all know who you are, please identify yourself because I believe Braden is being required to keep notes. And with that, Mr. President, thank you very much for this opportunity.
Thank you, Mr. Comptroller. Thank you, Mr. Auditor. We appreciate you being here. Or Mr. Comptroller, number 1 for today. We appreciate you being here with us and excited. All right, at this time, I would ask our clerk for any corrections, additions, and noted abstentions for today's agenda. And I will ask our actual auditor to come to the dais for a quick moment. Mr. Pash.
Thank you, Mr. President, and good morning, everyone. And for our Comptroller number 2, I'm Celeste Amato, Clerk to the Board of Estimates, and I get to read all the corrections, walk-ons, deferrals, and other notes that set the final agenda for the morning. This morning, we have the following corrections to note. SB 26-12781 for the Department of General Services, Professional Services Agreement with GFT Infrastructure Incorporated. For MBE, we are striking 0% and replacing with 27%. And for the WBE goals, we are striking 0% and replacing with 10%. For SB 26-12823, Department of General Services, Professional Service Agreement, MK Consulting Engineers, LLC. Under MBE goals, we're striking 0% and replacing with 27%, and striking under WBE goals, striking 0% and replacing with 10%. And for SB 26-11340 for the Bureau of Procurement, this is Amendment 1 under RFQ 000114, Industrial Bearings and Seals with Bearing Distributors Inc. and Motion Industries for $92,683.34. In the background explanation, the first paragraph, first line, we are striking Department of General Services and replacing with Department of Public Works. Excuse me. This morning we have no walk-ons. We have the following deferrals to note. SB 26-12887, Law Settlement Agreement and Release, Dara Porter versus Mayor and City Council of Baltimore for $117,000. This item has been deferred until September 2nd at the request of the Comptroller. SB 26-11414 for Information Technology Professional Services, Lockthreat LLC for $203,004. This item has been deferred until September 2nd at the request of the Comptroller. SB 26-12810 for the Baltimore Police Department. This is a subrecipient grant agreement with VertoSoft LLC for $388,889. This item has been deferred until September 16th at the request of the Comptroller. SB 261205-2 for the Bureau of Procurement and the Baltimore Police Department, a third renewal for a cooperative contract for police-initiated towing services management. No increase to the dollar value of this cooperative relationship. This item has been deferred until September 16th at the request of the comptroller. SB 261269, Bureau of Procurement, Amendment 3 to Master Agreement, Cooperative Contract with Pitney Bowes. This item has been deferred until September 2nd at the request of the comptroller. And SB 261264 for Baltimore City Recreation and Parks. This is a project fund submission with the Baltimore Civic Fund for AFRAM 2027 for $1,500,000. This item has been deferred until September 2nd at the request of the comptroller. SB 261223 for the Department of Transportation, an increase to Modaxo Traffic Management USA contract for $7,643,448. This item has been deferred until September 2nd at the request of the comptroller. And SB 261226 for the Recreation and Parks, an agreement extension number 1 and extension number 2, and a first amendment to the agreement with the Maryland Department of Housing and Community Development. This item is deferred until September 2nd at the request of the agency. The following items are being withdrawn from today's agenda. They are SB 261209 for the Bureau of Procurement, Amendment 1 to Goods and Services Contract with George S. Coyne Chemical Company for $0. This is withdrawn at the request of the agency. And SB 26128786 for the Health Department, Professional Services Agreement with Amani Rose RN for $75,000. This item has been withdrawn at the request of the agency. We do not have any protests or statements received for today's agenda. The following items are on the non-routine agenda this morning. SB 261264 for the Department of Audits, biennial performance audit, follow-up, Department of Finance for FY26 through FY25 through FY26. The original SB for that audit number is SB 261275. For SB 26124113, again, also audits, biennial performance audit for the Department of Public Works, FY23 through FY26. And SB 261275, Department of Finance audits response to performance audit, Collections Department. And SB 261277, Department of Public Works, Amendment 3 to an emergency procurement professional startup and operating services for $12,877,953.44. We have the following abstentions to note this morning. The Honorable Mayor Brandon M. Scott is absent this morning. The City Administrator, Faith Leach, is sitting in for the mayor, and she has no abstentions to note. The Honorable President Zeke Cohen has no abstentions to note this morning. The Honorable Comptroller Bill Henry is abstaining on all travel requests and travel reimbursements. He's also abstaining on SB 261227, Planning Department Grant Agreement, Chesapeake Shakespeare Company for $50,000. And SB 261264, Planning Department Grant Agreement with Chesapeake Shakespeare Company for $75,000. The City Solicitor, Ebony Thompson, has no abstentions to note this morning. Director of Public Works, Matthew Garbark, has no abstentions to note this morning. And there are no votes to record on the
Madam
routine.
Clerk, I just wanted to note that the Deputy City Solicitor is sitting in, but I also have no abstentions this morning.
Oops, sorry about that, Stephen.
It's okay.
We have no abstentions to note for Deputy City Solicitor Stephen Salisbury. And again, we have no votes to record as part of the routine agenda this morning. And that concludes our opening statement, Mr. President. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. At this time, I ask for a motion to approve and adopt the opening statement as read by the clerk.
So moved?
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay. The opening statement has been adopted. And now direct board members' attention to the memorandum from the Council President's Office dated August 19, 2026, identifying matters to be considered as routine agenda items together with any corrections, additions, abstentions, and no votes that have been noted by the clerk. I will entertain a motion to approve all the items contained on the routine agenda.
So moved?
Second.
It's been moved and properly seconded. All those in favor of approving the items on the routine agenda say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say nay. The ayes have it. The routine agenda items have been adopted. Seeing no further questions, we will now move to the non-routine agenda. The first item on the non-routine agenda is from the Department of Audits under SB 26-12648. This is a request to note the biennial performance audit follow-up of the Department of Finance and their effectiveness and accuracy for the retroactive payment process for employee earnings in Workday for fiscal 2025 and 2026. On behalf of audits, we have City Auditor Josh Pash. Mr. Pash, the floor is yours.
Good morning, Mr. President, Mr. Comptroller, Madam City Administrator. My name is Josh Pash. I'm the City Auditor, and I am here to present the follow-up of the biennial performance audit for the Department of Finance. Next slide. I will go over our audit objectives, our results, our methodology, and the implementation status of those prior findings. Next. Our audit scope and objective. So our audit scope and objective was to determine the implementation status of management's action plans for the prior recommendations. The prior audit objective was to evaluate the effectiveness and accuracy of the retroactive or retro payment process for employee earnings in Workday, including the calculation and disbursement of withholdings that are based on employee earnings. Those withholdings are making it to the right place. We looked at fiscal years 2025 and 26, going through April of 26. The reason we took it into fiscal year 26 was to capture the most recent processes used by Department of Finance. I would like to thank the audit team and the Department of Finance personnel for all their work on this audit. Next slide. So we had two findings that we followed up on, and both were partially implemented. Next slide, please. Our audit methodology. So first, we interviewed Department of Finance personnel and then also the payroll staff responsible for doing these adjustments to understand the updates made to the payment process for COLA and ad hoc requests and to assess the payroll staff's awareness of the new procedures. We reviewed Workday guidance and process documentation for the ad hoc retro payments, including manual calculations, to assess design, implementation, clarity, and completeness of the retro payment process. We selected 90 transactions for fiscal years 25 and 26, including both COLA and ad hoc or on-demand transactions. So those are one-by-one transactions that are made in the retro process requested by agencies. We verified approvals, supporting documentation, and compliance with our procedures. And then we reviewed documentation supporting of additional payroll staff to assess the implementation. That was one of Department of Finance's action plans, was to staff that department to have the personnel. Next slide. Okay, so our first finding in the prior audit was that there were significant issues identified in the retro payment process, including errors in calculations and insufficient supporting documentation. We noted that there was a substantial number of payments that were processed manually, increasing the risk of errors and including overpayments and duplicate payments when a lot of the transactions could have been automatically calculated through Workday. Our recommendations were to establish policies and procedures for guidance on how to process retro payments in Workday, and also to ensure supporting documentation is included to support that those retro payments were approved and correct, and then also to train employees on how to use that process. So we marked this as partially implemented. We did see significant improvement. We tested 60 samples from fiscal year 25 to 26. That showed improvement from the last audit. We had no exceptions in any of those samples. No errors were found in our testing. We found that Department of Finance did develop guidance for processing retro payments. However, that guidance did not cover all areas that were mentioned in the prior audit and also agreed to by management. For example, there was nothing in the policies and procedures to discuss duplicate payment prevention, pension deduction, validation processes, documentation retention requirements, and evidence supervisor review. Just to reiterate, we did look for those in our testing of the samples and did not find any exceptions. This really was going towards the succession planning and making sure the processes are consistent going through the future. And so basically, all that guidance should be formally documented. And also, there was no evidence that the training for supporting the employees on how to do the process could not be provided, and so forth. We could not assess that. Okay, next slide. The second finding was, prior finding was that pension deductions were not consistently applied to retro COLA payments. For 18 of the COLA events, 10 did not include pension. This was for the prior audit. And we noted that the city had to incur additional costs of approximately $533,000 of missed pension contributions that were not taken from employees during the COLA increases. Our recommendation was that they perform analytics in a test environment before applying the COLA to the real live workday, and then also to identify analytics that they should be using going forward, and then also to train the responsible personnel on how to run those analytics. This was marked as partially implemented. We noted that Department of Finance has taken steps toward implementing the recommendation. They hired additional staff. They strengthened oversight. They tested the retro process in sandbox environment, and they applied the pension deductions properly in all 16 retro COLA transactions during our test period. We did note that they did not establish formal procedures governing the sandbox analytics, which is a very complex process, and there was no clearly defined analytics to be performed, and they did not provide evidence that the staff had been provided on there. Again, this was more on the formal policies and procedures, and then since it is such a complex process, it is very important for continuity and for consistency. Next slide. Okay, I will take any questions.
Ms. Bash, I thank you and your team for another thorough audit. Any questions from the board?
Mine's just a,
Comptroller.
thank you, Mr. President. Mine's just a procedural one. When the agency gives their self-assessment of how they've done, that's before or after you've done your assessment of how they've done?
That is the very beginning of the audit.
Right.
So we get
Okay.
that assessment. Based on that, we decide whether to test. If the agency says we haven't implemented anything, then we don't test anything because there's nothing to look at. If they say they have implemented A, B, and C, we go and we test those A, B, and C.
Okay, so when they say, oh yeah, we did it, and you say, you did most of it, is this the first opportunity that they have to respond to the audit department's assessment of partially implemented, or do you tell them that in advance and sometimes they push back and they say, well, we did or didn't need to do that, or is that what happens here?
So the validation process is first. Once they identify those areas that they have completed or even partially completed, we test those. As we're testing, there's constant communication, so we want to validate all exceptions. So if we say we didn't find the supporting documentation for this retro, they have that opportunity to say, oh, you're looking in the wrong place, here it is, and then that will not be an exception. After those have been vetted with the process level personnel, we go ahead and escalate that and we say, okay, here's where our findings are, and then the higher level management, how high they determine that, but when we have the exit conference, it pretty much goes all the way top, and then they have the opportunity to come back and say, we disagree with this, or we think that this way of presentation is misleading, which we don't want to do, and then we will have that conversation going back and forth.
Gotcha. Okay, thank you. That's it.
City Administrator?
Yep. Thank you so much, Mr. Auditor. First, I'll make a comment, and then I have a question along the lines of the comptrollers. So one, again, thanking you and the entire audit team, as well as the Department of Finance team. I think what this follow-up audit shows is the value of the partnership that we have around auditing. You know, when we go through these audits, oftentimes it may feel like a gotcha, but that's not how the administration receives it. Any highly functioning government organization has an entity that audits its services so that we can improve and ensure that we are in compliance. And while you noted significant improvement, there's still, you know, a few tweaks on the policy side. I do want to acknowledge the finance team and the work that they did to turn around between the audit period to make these updates. There were no exceptions to the testing that you all did, you know, but there are some final policy tweaks to be in full alignment. but this is what the audit process is supposed to result in. It is supposed to result in improved processes and improved compliance. And so I just wanted to acknowledge that Baltimore City government auditing is working, and so is the Department of Finance. So I just wanted to take that point of personal privilege. And then to the comptroller's question about the engagement with the team, because the finance department noted, or their feedback or their self-assessment was that they were in compliance with all these items. They believed that they had fully implemented. The audit lays out recommendations, but like for that first recommendation, they had developed the policies and procedures, but then the policies and procedures were lacking around 3 specific areas. And so what I want to spend some time talking about is the specificity in which the original audit's recommendation must be followed in order to be in compliance, and is there agreement and alignment around that specificity?
Okay, great question. To kind of start off with gratitude, I do want to thank the city administrator and deputy city administrator for putting our audits and giving them high priorities from the different agencies. I think that has definitely had a positive effect on the recommendations and management action plans being implemented. So that's a great appreciation also to the entire board. To address when, for instance, in these cases, when we looked at the policy and we found those gaps in the policy, those were critical exceptions we found in the previous audit. So those are specifically highlighted. When we put together the final report, we have the conversation with the agency to come to a meeting of the minds. Most of the time, I think we're very fortunate that the agency agrees. There is sometimes where, like I said, there's language concerns. So we make the effort so we're not speaking complete audit language that might be misleading to the public, and we go ahead and make that. The goal is to present the findings, present the risk, and then also to have that management action plan. But the management action plan is developed in coordination with the agency, so it's realistic. Because we don't want to make a recommendation, buy a $5 million system, which is not, at all feasible, so to come to there. Does that answer your question?
So, somewhat. So what I'm getting at is, the agency takes the audit findings or the audit recommendations, and they use that to develop their follow-up plan to implement. And I think in the case of finance, they believe themselves to have implemented all of the recommendations. But the auditor has determined that there are aspects of the policy that are missing. And so is there alignment around exactly what needs to happen in order for the team to be in compliance? Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay.
So at the end of every audit, we have an exit conference with the agency.
Okay.
During that exit conference, we discuss what we'll be looking for in the next audit, so that basically people know we're not going to come in and they'll say, we never heard of that, we didn't understand that. There's that communication, which is before the report, which is before the agency says we agree. We actually look for alignment in the agency action plan to the recommendations. There are instances where the agency, as a subject matter expert, would say, that's a great recommendation, but here is one that we're already planning, we're already working on, and so we will modify the recommendation. The goal is to address the risk to the city. The recommendations is therefore, we come up with the recommendation based on the audit and the processes that we've tested. But if the agency has a different action plan, we will make that alignment between the action plan and the recommendation.
Thank you.
Mr. Comptroller.
Thank you, Mr. President. I just wanted to take a moment to sort of echo the city administrator's comments and do a callback to the conversation we had yesterday evening, talking about the attitude that we have tried to bring to the city's auditing. And I've said this before, I say this out at community groups a lot. I really like using the Ted Lasso comparison of, it's not, audits are not about a gotcha. We are sincerely, as city partners, trying to help our fellow agencies be the best versions of themselves they can be. That's what it's about, trying to help agencies be as effective and efficient as they can be in doing what they're supposed to do. And we can't do that without partnership. And we sometimes bend over backwards to make it as non-gotcha-ish as we can, because that kind of approach is not conducive to the teamwork and the partnership that you need to really make these effective. So thank you.
So going along,
Bash?
go ahead, thank you. Going along those lines, a lot of audit shops, if it's partially implemented, will note in the audit assessment those things that are missing. And then you really have to kind of look through the whole report to kind of determine what was completed. So we've made a point in an effort to, in our assessment, to put those things that were successfully completed, so you get that full picture, and credit is actually given to the agency for what they have addressed and what they've worked on.
Thank you. Appreciate, again, the audit. Appreciate the mini love fest we're having up on the board.
Thanks to your leadership.
Oh, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Comptroller. He's got me blushing. No, and I will just echo my colleagues' comments that I think we are in a moment in our city's history where we are seeking to pivot and turn, and it does require a deep level of partnership. And with partnership is accountability, and that can engender conflict and tension. And part of the point is we got to hold ourselves and each other accountable to high standards if we are going to become the great American comeback city that we all know we can be. But having audits that are meaningful, that are thoughtful, that dig in and illuminate challenges, and we'll hear about another one in just a few minutes, I think is a critical component of that. And I do appreciate both the comptroller's team, Mr. Pash, and then the city administrator and our agencies for taking this part of accountability very seriously. I also thank my colleagues on the council who have really dug in and done some exceptional oversight, at times in partnership with Mr. Pash this term. And so, I think all of us up here are seeking to demonstrate that we can disagree at times, and that we can hold ourselves to high standards without tipping the ship over. And and that's what leadership really is. So I appreciate your work. Yes, but if it's Love Fest stuff, then we're going to keep it moving. Go ahead.
So I just want to make a comment on what the comptroller said about audits bending over backwards to work with the agency. That is usually in the form of taking more time for the agency to give responses, as opposed to other connotations that might have.
Understood. And I will note, I think my team has observed still work to be done on agencies responding quickly and with urgency at times. And so an ongoing process. Yes, sir.
I appreciate the reframing. Thank you.
All right. That said, thank you, Mr. Pash. We are going to bring on up Mr. Michael Moxton from the Department of Finance. Director Moxton, the floor is yours.
Good morning, Mr. President, Madam CA, Comptroller, Board. My name is Michael Moxton. I am the Director of Finance for the City of Baltimore, and I want to start off by echoing what everybody said about thanking the auditor and the incredibly collaborative process that helps us move forward. This audit is a follow-up to an audit that was conducted during the late stages of the pandemic, and the city was in a difficult place in those years. The amount of progress that's been made shows how seriously we take this. We have to pay our people right. And what the results show, first and foremost, is that there are no errors, and that's a huge first step. We are, at the same time, also making sure that we never go back to the bad days, no matter what happens. And that means policies and procedures. The work is well underway. You can only train people when you have good policies and procedures. You can only do that when you have people to train. And so the staffing up that started a few years ago, the policy work, the training work is all continuing iteratively to put us in a stronger place. So to take you through the specifics, I'm going to bring up our Deputy Finance Director, Ioana Moisidis.
Good morning, Mr. President, honorable members of the board, and Comptroller number 2. My name is Ioana Moisidis. I'm Deputy Director.
Number
for
1 over there, just to be clear.
Correction. Duly
Gotcha,
noted.
Braden.
I'm Ioana Moisidis, Deputy Director for Finance, and I will try to keep it brief. Also, a Love Fest, I do want to thank the Department of Audits. It is sincerely helpful to have their additional eyes and review. And I'd also like to thank our payroll department. They work incredibly hard, including right now, processing payroll almost daily or preparing for the processing of payroll. And they are the reason behind this trajectory of improvement. So compared to the original audit period, finance process improvement, our training and tightened controls over the retro payment process has had results. You've heard testing found that pension deductions were properly applied in all of the applicable samples. I don't know if we can get to the next slide. With 0 pension deduction errors found. Retro payments were supported by documented requests and approvals in all samples, and payment calculations and supporting records were in Workday and SolarWinds, which is the ticketing system which payroll use, that were consistent with those approved transactions. Why this audit matters? As noted, there are a lot of retro payments. For retro payment COLAs in particular, we've had almost 13,000 from July of 2024 to June of 2026, totaling $21 million. So the process, retro payments can be needed for several reasons, right? They can be due to union contractual COLA agreements, compensation changes, ad hoc corrections such as missed hours or retroactive pay rate changes. In the original report, as noted by the auditor, there were calculation errors and missed pension deductions that were identified. This follow-up audit tests those samples to identify whether we effectively implemented. So finding 1, retro calculation errors and documentation gaps. What did we do to address this? You've heard about the payroll processing guide. It is about 300 to 400 pages, including a dedicated section for retro processing, which is a significant section, and it did include steps and screenshots for payroll staff. We added required prior approval for manual inputs and supervisory review of those inputs, and we trained staff to consistently reference the related help desk SolarWinds ticket numbers in Workday when processing those payments. Result of those changes, the audit confirmed the pension deductions were properly applied in all applicable test samples. Retro payments were supported by those documented requests and approvals. Next slide, investing in analytics, finding 2 missed pension deductions on COLA retro payments. The solution, and you've heard it before, investing in people and analytics. So as noted, we did hire additional staff. We also implemented a defined and phased process. So mass retro runs, those are the retros that we think of where there's a retroactive payroll run for a large number of employees. For example, the latest union contractual COLA increases. These are tested in Sandbox before moving to production, and we've actually expanded the scheduling timeframes so that there is multiple testing, agency review, DHR review, run again several times before the approval, before that final processing. So moving forward, next slide. Both recommendations, as noted, are partially implemented. So we already have in place that prior approvals, the supervisory, the ticket referencing. Those steps are happening. Those steps are documented. But our next steps is that the written retro processing documentation will be updated by October 2026 to include additional detail. And I heard a question about kind of, that in-between time or how the agencies know. It's our intention, and we typically do this, when we have a change that we believe addresses, we will come back to audits with that updated manual in October to show it to them and say, hey, does this meet what you're looking for? Are there any gaps that you can identify in what we're presenting? The additional change is that by September 2026, we'll ensure staff training is recorded in a centralized place. So we have staff training. It is done, but our recording of it in a centralized place was not done. And so we will complete that by September 2026. And finally, formalize sandbox analytics. So we have a very small group of people who actually do those sandbox analytics, and they have their list and their cheat sheet, but it is not, to Audit's point, a formal policy. And so we will put that in place by October 2026. And again, I'd really like to thank our payroll team, who's done a tremendous amount of process improvement and grown tremendously in the year since this first audit. And thank you to our partners throughout the city.
Thank you. Questions from the board? Ms. Comptroller.
Not for now, but I'm going to follow up with you about specifics about the PowerPoint itself that I had questions about the way you put the PowerPoint in.
Sure.
But yeah, just, okay.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Questions from the board? City Administrator?
Yes. Well, Deputy Director, you noted the volume of the retroactive payments that we have to do. That's largely driven by union contracts, like the.
Correct. So that statistic I gave is actually solely COLA contracts due to contract changes and not the ad hoc. So any organization would expect that you're going to have some amount of ad hoc related to an employee got a promotion and it was effective, the month prior, or an employee missed putting in leave on their timesheet. And of course, we're going to process that as promptly as possible. But that larger number is related to the union contract agreements.
Yeah, and so what I was thinking about is, we really should have a goal around minimizing the amount of retros that we do, but that, obviously, that's going to be difficult given, given our collective bargaining and how we do that. So that's what my thought was. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Just for the board and for employees who may watch this recording later, can you just give the information employees need to know to apply for their retroactive payments publicly?
Sure. So an employee does not need to apply for a retroactive COLA contractual change, and an employee does not necessarily need to apply for an ad hoc change. So an ad hoc change associated with a promotion, that employee's agency, HR, and payroll partners would be working together. On the HR side, they would be updating the employee's record to reflect that promotion. It would have an effective date. All of that is visible in Workday to the employee, the effective date, the pay rate, et cetera. And then the agency payroll partner, in some cases, that is also the agency HR, depending on the size of the organization, would submit the request for a payroll adjustment. So they would submit a worksheet indicating the period of time and the compensation change. That's used as validation when the retro is run for those ad hoc changes. For the contractual changes, typically what will happen is we work with the Office of the Labor Commissioner and the Department of Human Resources. So after a contract is approved and presented to the Board of Estimates and signed off on, the Office of the Labor Commissioner convenes a meeting. The Department of Human Resources identifies the time period in which those changes will be entered on the employee records. And then from there, we calculate when the retro payments can be processed. That information is shared, of course, with the OLC, with DHR, with the agency HR practitioners, and with the unions, who all take a role in notifying the employee in their respective communication channels.
Thank you. Are there any additional questions from the board? Seeing no further questions, this item is now noted by the board. The next item on the non-routine agenda is also from the Department of Audits under SB 26, 12413 from the Department of Audits. This is a request to note the biennial performance audit of the Department of Public Works for fiscal years 2023 and 2026. On behalf of audits, we have Deputy Auditor Mong. Deputy, the floor is yours.
Good morning, honorable members of the Board of Estimates. My name is Danny Mong, the Deputy City Auditor. I am very excited to be here to present you audit results from DPW landfill audit. Do we have the slides yet? Thank you. Why did we do this audit? We did a biannual financial audit in fiscal year 2019, and we observed certain control weaknesses at landfill. We did the follow-up in 2021. DPW partially implemented their action plans for our recommendations. We saw the opportunity to do a performance audit to improve some controls at landfill. We did comprehensive work, and I want to publicly thank the audit team for their hard work. We also appreciate DPW team for their cooperation, especially being a resident of the Baltimore City. I want to thank for DPW disposal services. It is essential for protecting the environment, safeguarding public health, and ensuring sustainable waste management. Next slide, please. This audit resulted in 7 findings. Before discussing them, I will go over objective, scope, methodology, and background information. Then I will entertain the questions at the end. Next slide. The audit objective is to evaluate the control over landfill tipping fee transactions. Our original scope was fiscal year 2024 and 2023, but we extended the scope to fiscal year 25 and 26 through May 31st, 2026. The reason is because DPW began accepting credit cards at landfill during fiscal year 25. Also, DPW replaced their solid waste management software in January 2026. These changes, as well as upgrades in their security camera surveillance system, were considered in our consideration. Next slide. Our focus is on the Bureau of Solid Waste, and we look at both Quarantine Road Landfill, QRL, and Northwest Transfer Station, NWTS. Positive note for the DPW, both locations had new and automated scales installed in 2023 as a result of the previous audit that we did in 2019 and 2021. Next slide. Key risks. The 2 key risks that we addressed in this audit are fraud risk and the financial risk. Next slide. This slide is important for finding number 5 and 7, which will be discussed later. In general, there are 3 types of customers: residents, small haulers, and large haulers, and no permit haulers. For small haulers, permit is required and it is issued by the health department. It is free for residents if the vehicle size is 7,000 pounds or less. Residents are allowed to dispose waste 2 loads per day or 5 loads per week. For small haulers, the rate is flat $20 up to 7,000 pounds. After that, small haulers are charged $3.38 per 100 pounds over. For large haulers, the rate was $67.50 per ton. The current rate is $135 per ton, effective November 1st, 2025. The prorated $135 per ton rate could be lower than the flat $20 load rate. For example, dumping 200 pounds, which is 1/10 of 10, will calculate to $13.50. For small haulers, payments are accepted at inbound, and weighing method is combined vehicle and load weight. Large haulers are weighed twice at inbound and outbound. Charges are on net weight. Payments are accepted at outbound. Residents and small haulers can go to QRL or NWTS. However, large haulers can go to QRL only. Next slide, please. There are three payment options: cash, credit card. Credit cards were started accepting an NWDS in October 2024, and at QRL it started in April 2025. The third type of payment is on account. License holders operating in city, they can open an account with city and are billed monthly by Department of Finance. For each month, DPW Office Support Specialist downloads billing data from the system, and then it is sent to DOF for Department of Finance for processing and billing. Each hauler is assigned a unique account number in Workday. Next slide. There are significant two systems during our audit scope. The one on the left is an old system called Desert Micro, and the one on the right is Berating. It's a new software. The old software was manual reading. Credit card activity was recorded as cash, and there is no denomination breakdown of cash. And then application is shared at two locations, meaning the system number transitions based on arrival time jointly, combining both side transitions numbers as one. The new system that indicates that there is some challenges in to do a proper reconciliation. The new system, it is an automated reading. It differentiates between credit card and cash transaction, and the report shows cash breakdown, and the application is used separately. As a result, the transaction numbers are in sequential order. Next slide, please. This slide is very important for finding number one. The overall risk that we are trying to address here is revenue not being recorded or collected, or cash being misappropriated. We divided this process into two parts. For the first part, the risk is whether deposit includes all cash collected. For this part, key players are cashiers and supervisor. Cashiers collect payments. They reconcile cash on hand against the cash drawer report. They prepare daily packages. They prepare a deposit back and sign on the back, and sign deposit log. Supervisor counts the cash collection for the day, observes cashiers preparing a deposit slip, puts the money in the bag, and seals it. Supervisor signs on the deposit bag and the deposit log. For the second part, the key players are supervisor and courier. When cash is picked up by courier, they initial and date on brings receipt log. Also, they ask cashier to sign in courier's device for deposit pickup. We noted control strengths as well as some control weaknesses, which will be discussed in finding number one. Next slide, please. When deposit is made to the bank, the city receives a notification in Workday. The notification comes in the task to the cashier, supervisor, and office support specialist. Office support specialist scans the deposit slip in Workday and verify the amount agreed to the reconciliation form. Next slide. Finding number one, reconciliation is the process of verifying that recorded cash and credit card transaction match actual cash on hand and bank balances. This ensures accuracy and prevents discrepancies. However, DPW landfill does not reconcile cash, credit card, and on-account transactions. Without effective reconciliation, there is a risk of revenue not being recorded or collected and cash being misappropriated. Next slide. Proper way of reconciliation is for credit card collection, compare the total dollar amount of the tickets to the total credit card amount from the LexisNexis report or the out report. For the cash collection, proper reconciliation is reconciling collected cash to the total dollar amount on the total tickets, cash drawer activity report, or the out report in the new system, deposit log, bank deposit slip, Brink receipt log, and bank statement. For on-account collection, proper way is to reconcile the number of transactions and amount recorded in the monthly transaction report from the DBW system to Workday. Next slide. Currently, DBW is not properly reconciling reconciliation for the credit card collection, as well as for the cash collection. Landfill cashiers reconcile cash on hand against the drawer report only. Also, for the verification of the bank deposit, our tests show that DBW did not reconcile and verify bank deposits consistently. We look at 30 samples each at each location. For the QRL, we found that there were 8 days. The revenue was posted by the finance department rather than the DBW. When this August, the deposit slip is not being uploaded into Workday. In one case, the posting occurred over a year after deposit was made to the bank. We observed the same thing for 2 days at NWTS. Next slide. We also look at the daily packages that DBW prepared. We found out that the deposit slips and deposit logs were significantly missing at QRL. The main reason is because at that time, during that time, QRL was under construction and the documentation was saved in a trailer. For NWDS, we found one missing documentation only. Next slide. Since we did not get the complete daily packages from DBW, we tried to independently obtain documents for reconciliation, and we did reconciliation, and we found out that there are 10 exceptions at QRL, and there were 4 exceptions as NWTS. Mainly because of the missing documents, we were not able to determine what is the cause of not the reconciliation issue. Next slide, please. For on-account payment, DBW does not reconcile the monthly transaction report from their system to the Workday system. We look at 3-month sample from each fiscal year from 2024 through 2026. We found some exceptions. There were items on the Workday report, but not on the report provided by DBW. There were some account holders were not billed. The reason was because account numbers were not recognized by the Workday. In that case, a notification is sent by Workday to the Department of Finance Accounts Receivable team. The team ran the integration with the items that failed to process for follow-up. Next slide. The causes of these findings is because DBW has comprehensive policies and procedure, but it does not require employees to do the proper way of reconciliation. Although credit cards were accepted in 24 October and 25 April, the policy has not been updated to incorporate the requirement for credit card transactions. Also, policy does not provide guidance on how to process and reconcile on accounts, billings, and payments. Most importantly, for DBW landfill, they does not consider the verification of recording revenue in Workday as their obligation. They stated that once they deposit the money in the bank, process the credit card transaction, and send the file to DOF for the monthly billings, they feel like that their responsibility is done. They feel like this is not their responsibility to verify that the revenue is recorded in Workday. Next slide. So our recommendations are update and implement the existing policies and procedures to include the proper reconciliation procedures for cash, credit card, as I discussed before. For the on-account billings, establish policies and procedure that will include how to run the DPW monthly transaction report used for billing, and reconciliation of total number of transaction amount from Workday to the transactions in the DPW system. This is very, very important because only 2 employees know how to do this work, so it is very important for the succession planning or the sustainability of the process. Finding number 2. Finding number 2 is related to the calibration of the weighing scales. According to DPW, a vendor calibrates the weighing scales on a quarterly basis. We reviewed 10 quarters from December 2023 to March 2026, and we found inconsistency. At QRL, the scale was installed in September 2023. They missed the first 3 quarters. They completed 1 in September 24, and they missed 2 quarters after that. For NWDS, the scales was installed in August 2023. They missed the first 4 quarters, but they have been doing the calibration consistently since December 2024. Next slide. Inaccurate measurements can affect the billings that ultimately reduce the revenue. The cause is there is limited management oversight of the scale calibration process. Our recommendation is to designate a team to monitor the quarterly scale calibration process, have the vendor contact calibrations on a quarterly basis, and most importantly, retain calibration certificates consistently. Next slide. Finding 3. Finding 3 is related to the transaction modifications. Desert Micro's old system, the scale reading was manually recorded. The new system parenting, the scale reading is automated. Under both systems, cashiers can modify transactions, example, changing the weight, and process the transactions without supervisor's approval. The policy requires cashier to document any modification transactions and get approval by the supervisor on duty before processing the transaction. However, we recognize that there is staffing shortages. There are not always supervisors on site. From the operational standpoint, we can understand that DPW does not want to hold the line, so cashiers have the ability to process the modified transactions without the supervisor's approval. However, there should have been mitigating controls to prevent unauthorized activities. Detecting controls such as periodic monitoring of modified transaction logs should be in place. Next slide. The causes are because DPW stated that they did not have support for the former system. The new system can run automated logs. The vendor provided DPW with tutorials on how to run reports and is always available with the support. Currently, DPW focus is to become accustomed with the daily activities, and then they will be focusing on monitoring a set of these modified transactions. Our recommendation is to update and implement the policy to require supervisors to monitor modified transactions periodically. This can be done daily or weekly. Next slide. Finding number 4. Finding number 4 is related to the cash drawer balance account at landfill. Current policy said the beginning balance drawer supposed to be $300, but our observations show that cashiers are allowed to keep $400 drawer balance. We also observed the beginning and opening and closing of cashiers. Policy requires cashiers to count their cash drawer and enter the amounts in the system at the start and end of their shift. For both start and end shift, we observed that cashiers count the cash drawer balance casually, meaning that they did not really count the cash buy combination. They do not formally document the count. Some cashiers, they just noted those counts on a piece of paper instead of formally documenting the count. Supervisor does not formally evidence the observation of the count. Next slide. We also observe the safeguarding of the cashier's bags. For both locations, cashier bags are kept in safes. Bags are labeled with cashier's names. Bags can be locked, but cashiers do not lock their bags. The safes are placed in bathrooms. The safes are with combination locks. Cashiers and supervisor know the combination codes to unlock the safe. At each location, there are 2 permanent cashiers and 1 floating supervisor. The risk is, next slide. Without verifying the starting cash, it is unlikely to be detected if money is lost or stolen. Without fully safeguarding cashier bags, it will be challenging to prove who commits theft if someone steals money. The cause is the policy is not being enforced. Our recommendation is to update and implement the existing policies and procedures to reflect the current starting cash balance, count the cash drawer balance by denomination, and formally document the count at the start and end of the shift, and lock cashier's bag. Next slide. This finding is related to the validity of the permits for the small haulers. We selected a random samples of 15 from each facility. We found 9 small haulers with expired or no permits. They were charged at the special rate for a combined total of 254 times at both locations. The city's rate for non-permit haulers as of November 2025 is 135 baht. Since the weight of trash disposal is annual, we were not able to calculate the financial loss to the city. Next slide. For those 30 haulers, we contacted health departments and obtained tag numbers and expiration dates. We compared health departments' data with service date and tag numbers recorded on the service date. 2 sources did not agree for 7 haulers. We also tried to compare the health department's expiration dates with expiration dates recorded in DPW system. Dates were blank. So we look at the dates in the old system, but we could not obtain all expiration dates in Desert Micros. This slide is for NWTS, and the next slide is for QRL. Next slide, please. Sorry, go back to the previous one. Thank you. Yes, we did the same exercise for QRL. We found out that service tag number did not agree to permits. Permits were not valid on service dates. Baradan system have blank date. Next slide. We tried to identify the causes, and data migration from the causes are because of the data migration from the old system. There are some data entries in Desert Micros. Also, cashiers do not consistently check the expiration dates. Skip. Next slide. We did further work, and we identified that there is a designated field to enter the expiration dates. However, cashiers were entering the expiration dates in the comment field rather than the designated place. That caused the data migration from the old system to the new system. Next slide. We recommend the Director of DPW review and update the license plates and permit expiration dates in the new system for accuracy. Establish control in the system that will flag if permit expiration dates are missing, or if permits are expired, one vehicle license are typed in. Consider issuing new permits and renewing permits to small haulers at QRL and NWDS rather than issuing from the Department of Health. Next slide. Finding number 6 is related to the security cameras. The detective control at QRL is not working effectively as intended. We observed the cameras at QRL Scale House. There are 3 cameras. One camera is pointed at the inbound cashier. 2 other cameras are pointed at the outbound cashier's activity and the entrance of the scale house. Only 1 camera pointed at the inbound cashier was working at the time of observation. According to DPW, the footage is retained on average for 60 days. We look at the footage for the 1 functional camera in the scale house, and it was retained for 20 days only. Next slide. In the system, we observed that there are additional 13 cameras registered in the system. 2 out of 13 cameras were not functioning. On April 23rd, 2026, we were informed that there was a service call to the vendor to have the cameras fixed. As of May 13, 2026, those cameras were not functioning. But on May 29, 26, we visited the NWDS facility again. At the time of our visit, the camera vendor was scoping out the facility in preparation for the new camera install that will be forthcoming. We look at the camera footages for 11 remaining cameras, and it was retained as the policy requires. Next slide. The effect is DPW has limited ability to review camera footage if something happens at the landfill. The cause is DPW is not periodically checking whether all cameras are functioning, recording, and retaining. We recommend the Director of DPW weekly review dashboard to verify that cameras are operating properly, recording, and retaining footages. Next slide, please. Last but not the least, this finding is related to non-permit hauler rate. It is not consistently enforced. At both locations, residents are allowed to dispose of residential trash free of charge if it is brought in small cars. When city residents bring non-residential trash in a small vehicle or residential trash in large vehicle, they are expected to pay 135 baht 10 based on the rate schedule. At NWTS, we observed that there were 88 transactions charged at the small hauler rate. There were no permit holder names recorded in the system. NWTS allowed residents who brought non-residential trash in small vehicles. We observed that DPW did not allow a resident bringing residential trash in a full-size van on March 31st, 2026, when we did the observation. For QIL, we found 21 transactions charged at the small haulers rate. There were no permit holder names recorded in the system. According to DPW, it was resulted from the error on the part of employee or a system error misclassifying the type of hauler. We observed that anyone coming to the location was charged at the rate of 135 baht 10. Next slide. The effect is we were not able to calculate the financial loss to the city because the weight of trash disposal was not recorded. The cause is NWTS cashiers do not follow the established rate schedule for non-permit haulers. We recommend the Director of DPW reevaluate the fee charge, to reevaluate the fee structure for residents who bring items not accepted in the residential area in small vehicles and residents who bring residential items in large vehicles and apply the rate consistently at both locations. Next slide. So we did comprehensive work. There were like a total of 15 procedures that we did. Basically, we interviewed key individuals from DPW. We contacted walkthroughs. We identified the risks and we evaluated the design of the internal controls. We reviewed the existing policies and procedures. We observed cashier drawer opening and closing procedures, daily cash handling procedures, and we also look at the physical security controls. Next slide. We validated whether the cameras were functioning properly and footages were retained for 60 days. We validated whether DPW calibrated scales at QRN and NWDS on a quarterly basis. We validated whether correct rates were established in the former system and the current system, and we did not find any finding. And we verified that former and current system converted from pounds to tens correctly and calculated the amount of tipping fee accurately, and we did not find anything. Additionally, we verified the users in the current system are valid users with compatible access for their job functions. Then there are no findings. Also, we observed and reviewed cashiers can modify without supervisor's approval. That concludes my presentation, and I will be happy to answer if you have any questions.
Thank you, Deputy Auditor. Appreciate the thorough audit. This will be the less love-festy part of the meeting. You described some lax financial management procedures. Just to sort of put it on the table and hopefully get it off the table, are you concerned about any form of fraud that may have occurred?
We did not find any fraud instances. However, control weaknesses can increase the fraud risk.
Understood. Your audit covered, Mr. Pash, do you want to jump in there?
Yeah, I just want to mention that the discrepancies we did find were small, small dollar amounts, so we did not find indications of fraud. Interestingly enough, is a lot of our recommendations or findings are quick fixes, and so they're just like pretty simple, but we didn't find any fraud, and like I said, the differences we did in the reconciliations were small.
Understood. And so there's no concern about, even if it's a small amount, an employee or a person operating in a way that may have contributed to.
So when we did the law, we were doing the audit, we found that the lax procedures where a lot of these discrepancies should be investigated because they could roll over.
Sure.
Then again, like we didn't find even rolling over would be that significant. But if something did occur, looking at the cash bags that were not locked, anyone can have access to that. Everyone has access to the safe. It would be very hard to trace it, and that also kind of flows into the cameras. As of the current staff, we did not find anything that was concerning to bring to the attention of the board.
Understood. Yeah,
Can I just follow up on that?
sure.
I think it might help if we gave an idea of what is small, like in terms of dollar amount.
30 cents to $8.
Yeah, okay, all right. And the other one is the samples that you did, you saw no pattern of the same cashier?
The discrepancies would go up and down, so they would be like -$4, positive 30 cents. So there was no, it was consistent across the board,
Okay.
the discrepancies. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, I think the sort of premise or the question is trying to get at, like, was there a pattern that we could identify with a given employee? And it sounds like no
Right.
is the answer.
Yeah, no pattern among any of the days or the people. And then again, really nothing that would come to, let's say, us kick off a fraud investigation, nothing that brought us to that concern.
Understood. Your audit covered an extensive period and resulted in numerous findings affecting many different facets of the administration at the landfills, including weak cash management, improperly calibrated scales, dumping without permits, and other management deficiencies. I understand that in some cases improvements were being made, but among the deficiencies you noted, which do you consider to be the most urgent to be addressed and which present the greatest risk of financial loss to the city?
I do believe that finding number one recommendations are very important. Reconciliation is a key control to make sure that we address the key risks that we identified in this audit.
Understood. Other questions for the board? Madam City Administrator?
Yes. Thank you again for your efforts around this audit. I have more of a remark, and then I'll likely have some questions for the Department of Public Works when they present their slides. I think when I first saw this audit come in, because I think I gave you immediate feedback as soon as it came in, what it raised for me is something that I've been working with the Department of Finance as well as BSIT on in our Office of Technology. So we went through and we've done the fee study. As a part of our fee study, we looked at which fees and or services, but which fees can be paid online or can be paid via credit card. And what we noticed is during the pandemic, we put a significant number of services online. Remember, there was a big push with Paymentus, and we did the Paymentus contract because prior to the pandemic, I would offer, I don't know, a large majority, maybe 60% or more of our services you had to use cash for. And a thing that I'm very much interested in, there's a fine balance that we have to create of being able to provide services to our residents where, you know, they can use cash if needed, but also minimizing the cash handling in all of the services across the city of Baltimore. And I had an extensive discussion with the Department of Public Works about why we could not just move to credit card only at the landfill. Now, that creates a number of challenges. Oftentimes, the small hauler business is a cash-based business, so it would disproportionately, impact those small businesses, as well as some of our residents. And I think are the residents paying $20? We can get into that when DPW gets up here. And so I think that's a balance that we will have to find as a city is, we want to minimize cash handling for all of these different and smaller services, but we also know that we still have a significant unbanked population in the city of Baltimore that requires the use of cash. And so I just wanted to underscore this as a broader kind of policy discussion that we should be thinking about. During the period of the audit, if I'm not mistaken, we did begin to implement credit card payments. Right. At Pulaski, for example, Pulaski is what actually sparked me digging into which services use cash. We actually moved to Pulaski being the tow yard, being cashless, if I'm not mistaken. We can confirm, but I'm pretty sure you have to use a credit card at Pulaski, and it may have been an audit or an IG report around Pulaski that led us to moving to credit card payments at Pulaski and no cash. So again, I just wanted to raise this as more of a policy discussion that the board will need to have around which services we allow to use cash so that we are minimizing cash handling for, across the city. And then the other question that I had, I think, Adam, I sent you a message to ask you about the Brinks contract, because there are there are costs associated with cash handling that we also should be considering.
I replied to you, ma'am.
Okay, great. I'll look for it. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam City Administrator. Director Garbark.
Yeah, just following on that, you were mentioning it, Administrator, at the end there. There are additional expenses for cash handling that we may not necessarily need if we were to not go there, one being the armed security, as well as we are required to have, I believe, law enforcement officers, or at least an armed guard on site, which many times that is overtime that we are paying for an off-duty police officer to be there. So there are additional costs that are imposed that could be looked at as cost savings.
Yep. And to follow up on Matt's point there, we're talking about handling maybe $1,000 a day, right? So the amount of cash that we're handling versus the overtime and all the things that we're spending to handle the cash is more than the cash that we are receiving. So that's also, a cost-benefit analysis we should do as we look at whether or not we should move to a cashless system.
Thank you, Madam City Administrator. Just on that point, Mr. Garbark, so is the implication there that if you did not have cash, you would not need, you would not need some form of security? I mean,
That
you
is
could
my
still have-
belief.
Yeah.
I think the issue with the risk of cash poses potential danger for there to be some sort of incident that, a robbery of some sort or someone trying to get away that could escalate into some level of violence. Something that's more secured, more electronic, that doesn't have that, I don't think you would need to have that level of security and that level of, presence that you would need.
Okay. Appreciate that. Appreciate on the cashless conversation, the complexity of our unbanked population, whether it is folks who, many of our immigrant communities not properly banked, many of our communities that have been historically disenfranchised goes unbanked. There is work to do internally within the city to make sure everyone has access to banking and not just check cashing and other forms of payment that can end up being, in some cases, predatory. Mr. Comptroller.
Yes, and I'm wondering, my comments are on those lines, and did anybody else have any questions for the audit team? Because they're not going to address what we're going to talk about cashless or not.
No, but I have questions for the department
Yeah.
on the audit.
Well, yeah, as
Go for it.
we make that transition, it occurs to me that my recollection is the existence of the small hauler program comes from the council pressing a previous administration to recognize that a lot of the illegal dumping that the city copes with comes from people who were taking trash away from one place, but it was too expensive for them to follow the rules. And so we created a policy that would hopefully make it easier for them to do it properly. But listening to the points being made about the cost to us of taking that cash, it makes me wonder if one of the conversations that DPW and the administration and the council should be having is maybe we just don't charge small haulers for that. Maybe we work out a way where small haulers get to bring a certain amount over the course of a year, and at one point there was a process by which I think they were buying a book of vouchers downtown, and the cash was all done here where we have a better system, and then they would take the voucher with them to the landfill, and maybe that's another. I suspect we moved away from that because it was one more inconvenience for the small haulers, that it then became just easier to find an alley and dump it. But maybe we should be looking very big picture at how much we're paying to clean up illegal dumping and how much we're paying to secure cash at these facilities. And maybe it would make sense for the city financially to just say, hey, below a certain amount of trash, just bring it here and we will take it.
So thank you for that, Mr. Comptroller. In my conversations with DPW, I made a similar recommendation to should we require the haulers to come downtown, make the payment, and then go to the landfill? And the feedback was that that potentially could lead to illegal dumping because it's just an inconvenience. But again, an idea that we can test. I think we've done some work and have some good data around illegal dumping, right? I think it's a combination of things. Improper residential disposal, I think, may make up a significant portion of it. It could be some of the small haulers. And then it is also, I believe a driver of this was is also our bulk collection program and the time that it takes for the bulk collections. And I think that's why you see like mattresses, for example. But the concern about lowering the threshold for small haulers or waiving the fee is, I don't think that is in alignment with the Less Waste, Better Baltimore plan. And would we be incentivizing small haulers across the region to just come to Baltimore to go to our landfill and fill up our landfill because they don't charge? But again, I would have to look at what the fees are in those surrounding jurisdictions. On the large hauler program, remember the board raised the fee last year. We have seen a significant decline in the use of the landfill, which is what we want because we have to maintain the useful life of the landfill. So that would be my concern about potentially waiving or, waiving the fee, is that it could just lead to more trash in the landfill, which is the opposite goal that we want.
Thank you, City Administrator and Mr. Comptroller, to be continued at a later date, I am sure. All right, hearing no more questions from the board, we will now turn to the Department of Public Works. On behalf of DPW, we have Deputy Director Alan Robinson. Deputy Director Robinson, the floor is yours.
Good morning, Mr. President, Mr. Comptroller, Madam CA, and honorable board members. My name is Alan Robinson. I am the Deputy Director for the Department of Public Works. I see that our Comptroller number 2 had to step out for a moment, had to take an important phone call. So I'll make sure number 1, I apologize, you've been superseded. I'll make sure I formally introduce myself when he returns. There's always somebody younger. All right, so on behalf of the Department of Public Works, I do want to thank the audit team. Thank you very much for your diligence. It was a very collaborative approach, and the whole intent was to help us identify where there is some gaps that maybe as we're focused on other operations, we're not able to look at these as closely as we would like. And so by having a fresh set of eyes come in and support us through this, we definitely appreciate that. So thank you. All right, now with that, I do want to address the 7 findings that were presented today by the audit team. If we can have the slide brought up, DPW's response. Is anyone operating the slides? There we go. All right. During this conversation, we are going to talk about the various findings. Our first slide really just kind of notes some items. It was mentioned during the auditor's discussion about our switch from Desert Micros, our legacy system, to our new system, which is Paradigm, for our transaction management system at our scale houses. We talked about the encountered challenges between the migration of the data from the old system to the new system. And we also talked about the fact that there are 2 different types of facilities that we're accepting here. We talked about the Quarantine Road landfill, which is our actual physical landfill location. And we talked about the Northwest Transfer Station, which is not a landfill, but a location for debris to be deposited and then transferred from to a disposal site. So as we go to, all right, we moved on to finding number 1. So finding number 1 talked about key controls to identify discrepancies in cash handling procedures at DPW landfill is not effective. And to that, we appreciated that input, and we definitely concur. We are working to update our cash handling SOP to reflect the current business practices associated with the implementation of the new system. We are updating and reconciling the physical credit card receipts to make sure the appropriate transactions and settlement reports are adhered to. We're developing a new SOP that documents the process for generating monthly transaction reports in the new paradigm system. As we noted, the old system did not allow us to have that level of auditing, whereas the new system does. And we need to make sure that we properly have the SOPs and the training associated with being able to utilize those features. We will be developing a documented process for reconciling the total number of transactions and amounts from Workday to the total number of transactions and amount from the monthly transaction report. One of the findings stated that the staff did not take responsibility for making sure that what we were putting in our system was also being reflected in Workday. That is a training situation that we are addressing. It was also mentioned that there is a staffing shortage, so we will kind of address that when we get down a little bit, whereas we have 2 dedicated cashiers at each location, as well as 1 supervisor at the time that was floating between the 2, which made it difficult to have that checks and balances with the supervisor overseeing some of these transactions. Finding number 2, talked about the inconsistent calibrations of the Quarantine Road landfill and Northwest Transfer Station waste scales, and this may result in inaccurate billings. We did concur, but what we wanted to confirm was through our advanced calibration partners, we actually do currently provide oversight of the scale calibration process and monitor compliance with calibration requirements. The vendor currently performs scale calibrations on a quarterly basis and additionally conducts calibrations as needed following repairs, maintenance activities, or operational concerns that may impact scale accuracy. We also make sure that we are now carrying the calibration certificates are collected and retained to be available after each calibration event. And we make sure we have a centralized repository on a solid waste SharePoint site, as well as physical copies at the locations to ensure consistent record retention, accessibility, and audit readiness. We believe part of the concern here was that we were not audit ready when they came to ask for those particular documents. We had contract in place, we had calibration being done on a quarterly basis, but we could not readily put our hands on the documentation to support that. So we're putting measures in place to make sure that we have that information readily, and this was completed as of July 31st. We go to our next slide. We're talking about finding 3. This is the transaction modifications are not monitored. This is when we talked about having the dedicated supervisor. So the recommendation was to update and implement the policy that requires supervisors to monitor modified transactions periodically, either daily or weekly. And in response to that, we will make sure that we review the process, update the SOP, and implement the requirement for supervisors to monitor modified transactions periodically. One of the things that we've done immediately was we had 1 supervisor that was floating between the Northwest Transfer Station and Quarantine Road landfill. We now have a dedicated supervisor at each location, so they will be able to support these one-off transactions or review on a daily basis now. We move to finding number 4. There was a weak cash handling controls at the landfill and increases the risk of fraud going undetected. While the auditing team did denote that there was no systemic instances of fraud, anything that rose to that level, we do want to make sure that we are closing those gaps to make sure that the controls are tightened. The recommendation was to implement the standard operating procedure for cash handling at QRL and Northwest Transfer Station scale houses to reflect the current starting cash balance, to count the cash draw balance by denomination and formally document the count at the start and end of the shift, and to make sure that each cashier's bag is locked. So we will be updating our cash handling SOP to reflect the current cash draw starting balances and ensure consistency in cash handling practices between QRL and Northwest Transfer Station scale businesses. So essentially, as was noted, the cashiers were making casual denotes of how much cash they had. We're going to make sure that it is formalized in a form that can be collected and stored. SOP will be revised to require cash drawer accounts by denomination at both the beginning and end of each shift, with formal documentation of the count maintained as part of the daily reconciliation process. And then safe access will be restricted to supervisory personnel. Each cashier's bag will be secured with an individual lock, and the supervisors will maintain custody of the keys outside of operating hours. These will be distributed in the morning or assigned to at the beginning of each cashier's shift. You'll see some of the starting implementation dates a little further out is because we are in the process of hiring permanent cashiers and supervisors for this role. So we want to make sure we have enough time to allocate training and understanding of the policies. Finding number 5, talked about the manual data entry and system issues along with inconsistent validation of small hauler permit expirations, and these will cause revenue loss for the city. So there were 4 different recommendations here, and we touched on each of them. Recommendation 1, review and update the license plates and permit expiration dates in the new system for accuracy. We will be undertaking a comprehensive audit of the system to identify and correct records with missing or inaccurate permit expiration dates and associated license plates information. Next recommendation was to integrate with the Baltimore City permitting system, if possible. DPW will coordinate with BCHD to explore the feasibility of integrating or sharing a permit data to support verification of small hauler permit status. Next recommendation, establish a control in the system to flag if permit expiration dates are missing or if permits are expired when vehicle licenses are typed in. We will be working with the vendor to evaluate the system enhancements for the exception-based reporting and automatic flags for incomplete permit data. This is an ongoing activity with our vendor. And then the final recommendation was to consider issuing new permits and renewing expired permits to small haulers at QRL and Northwest Transfer. DPW continues to evaluate this recommendation as part of the broader operational and system improvements related to the small hauler account management and revenue controls. Now, note, the permit issuance is part of the governing code for the health department. I want to go ahead and shift our attention now to finding number 6. This is the security cameras are not operational at Quarantine Road. The recommendation was for the Director of DPW to conduct weekly reviews of the dashboard to verify that cameras are operating properly, recording and retaining footage. We will be working with our system vendor to confirm that the appropriate video retention settings are maintained for all operational cameras in accordance with the applicable requirements. In addition, DPW will continue to explore the development and implementation of a weekly dashboard or system-generated report to verify camera functionality, recording status, and footage retention. As stated by the auditors, they've already seen some of the improvements on the system there with the retention policy and timelines updated. And then finally, finding number 7, non-permit hauler rate is not consistently enforced. The recommendation was to reevaluate the fee structure for residents who bring items not accepted in the residential area in small vehicles, and 2, residents who bring residential items in larger vehicles, and ultimately apply the rate at both locations consistently. In our response, we concur. We recognize the need to further evaluate the current fee structure to ensure it appropriately reflects customer vehicle types, material acceptance criteria, and the operational differences between the facilities. So essentially, we want to update our policy to reflect current practices to make sure that we are adhering and being consistent across the board. We will continue to review and refine the fee categories to ensure fairness, consistency, and alignment with operational and financial objectives. The $135 per ton rate reference is established as the landfill tipping fee and is applicable to final disposal operations at the landfill. The Northwest Transfer Station functions as a transfer facility rather than a disposal site. This rate is not directly applicable in a consistent manner across both locations. When we say that, we're talking about at Quarantine Road Landfill, we have both an in and out scale. At Northwest Transfer Station, which is primarily used for our own residential collection and recycling teams, but also small haulers that are coming in and then local residents who may want to use it as a residential drop-off site. We're not getting our large haulers that typically will go to Quarantine Road Landfill. So as such, we do not have an actual in and out scale. We just weigh you coming in and we charge you the small hauler charge accordingly. All others that are using it are our own city trucks and vehicles. So we're not charging them that, but we are calculating how much is being disposed of at that time. Now, DPW is actively exploring the development of a dedicated transfer station fee structure to begin to better align rates with the facility function and service delivery. And we've broken it down into various phases of how we're going to be approaching this. In phase one, we're going to do the research and framework development for these, with our target of being December 31st of 2026. Phase two, the fee setting process and BOE submissions. This is our target for the beginning of fiscal year 28. And then, of course, the implementation based upon BOE approval. That concludes DPW's response to this audit, and we are now open for questions.
Thank you, Deputy. Last year, the city, as the administrator, I think, referenced, increased landfill tipping fees at Quarantine Road. But this audit calls into question whether that increased fee is being accurately collected from commercial haulers and whether cash payments are being fully paid to the city's account when they're collected. What steps are you taking to ensure accurate billing and fully collecting the amounts owed to the city, particularly by commercial haulers who should have permits, and that you're preventing fraud when payments are made in cash?
If I may clarify, sir, I think the audit was focusing from our commercial haulers. Many of our commercial haulers who use us on a day in and day out basis, they actually have a commercial account with us. And we will bill that commercial account and invoice them for their usage. For the other folks who are coming that may not have that commercial account, but they are in a large vehicle, we are charging them the 135. Where the discrepancy is where the small haulers were coming, or folks who were residential drop-offs in small vehicles that may not been charged, because for lack of a better term, basically we did not want to charge residents the 135 tipping fee that we're charging commercial vehicles. We wanted to treat them as small haulers, even though they might not have had small hauler permits, because they were disposing of something that was not able to be disposed of at our Bowleys, Reed Bird, or Sisson Street locations, and they needed to bring it there. We're talking about construction debris. We're talking about maybe hot water tanks and things of that nature that are larger. So, but to your point, that is part of our reconciliation, to making sure that we're updating all of our SOPs. We're making sure that our training is in alignment, to make sure that our supervisors are now verifying that all of these things in reconciliation on a daily basis is occurring, so that we know that we are properly applying the rates to the commercial haulers that are coming in, as well as to the small haulers and residential drop-offs.
Let's talk about that piece. It appears that inadequately trained personnel and inadequate supervision may have been common problems at several of the landfills. Can you get a little more deep into how you are addressing that particular deficiency? What does strengthened oversight within the department look like in this case?
Yes, sir. So one of the things we wanted to note, some of that was due to turnover. We were bringing in temporary cashiers to support the program because we were looking to hire full-time cashiers. So because of that turnover and the inconsistency with supervision, that's where the gaps were in the training. However, now we are formalizing the training program to make sure even if you are a temp that are coming to support this effort, you will be properly trained through the SOP. We, as I stated, now have a dedicated supervisor at each location, so we no longer have that float. It's about a 20 to 30-minute drive between Northwest and Quarantine, and when the supervisor was doing that, I left gaps in that coverage. So by now having a dedicated supervisor at each location, they'll be there doing hands-on training and verification of adherence to our SOPs.
Deficiencies in the management of cash are extremely problematic because they're preventable. How long have these deficiencies persisted, and what is being done to eliminate them? I know we began a deeper policy conversation about should we eliminate cash, but in the now of it, what are we doing about that?
Well, again, I want to thank the audit team for coming in and putting their eyes on it, giving us a fresh set of eyes to help us identify where those discrepancies were, so that we can put plans into place to address and close those gaps. And so that's where the training is coming in play. That's where the system auditing is coming into account to help us address those.
Mr. President.
Director Garbark, yes.
One thing I want to add is the switch from the Desert Micros to the Paradigm system was a huge step forward. It took out a lot of manual calculations and manual entries to now it's automated, and it allows us to use the credit card. So that went into effect last year. So that was a huge step forward with that.
Thank you, sir. The audit indicates that in some instances, deposits were posted by the Department of Finance rather than Department of Public Works. Is that still happening, and how does DPW work with the Department of Finance to ensure appropriate fiscal management practices are being implemented?
No, that should not still be occurring. I do apologize. The chief of the operation is not here to confirm that that's not occurring, but based upon what I was told, that is no longer the case. And we will be working closely with the Department of Finance to make sure that our folks are properly trained on workday procedures and on cash handling procedures to make sure that we are doing this the appropriate way.
Understood. Just as a sort of general comment here, a lot of the audits that we've received this year have a common theme around lax financial management, including in some cases failure to effectively implement bookkeeping procedures. Appreciate the director's comment about the new system that you all are using. Bottom line for me is any revenue that we are not collecting, any revenue that is not being assessed by the city and properly handled is money that could be going into our schools, our parks, our rec centers, our roads, and on and on and on. Clearly, the Department of Public Works and the utility that you all are in charge of are in desperate need of more financial support. And so having any kind of lax, loose systems around how we're handling cash or credit or just money is extremely concerning. Appreciate that. I know the department is taking this audit very seriously. Are you all, and maybe this is for the city administrator, are we doing it in partnership with other city agencies? Is there work across agencies to address financial challenges that we're seeing?
So that's to that point. I'm going to turn that over. I can only speak to what DPW is doing, and when we're working with other agencies, meaning the Department of Finance, and making sure, and also our audit team, to make sure that we are adhering to these processes. But I'll allow the city administrator to respond to the global view on this.
So thank you so much for that question. And it's a really good one. And I think it's one that we talk a lot about with the board. I do want to provide some additional context here. I think it's important to note the timing of when these audits occur. The audits aren't real time in that this happened yesterday.
Sure.
I think this audit period was several years ago, and maybe coming out of the pandemic. I don't remember the exact years of the pandemic. So I do remember the years of the pandemic. I don't remember the exact years of this audit. But oftentimes what we're seeing, much like the case of DPW, is during that time, we're transitioning to new systems. So I think, again, going back to the pandemic where I talked about Paymentus and all these things that we put in place, obviously there was the Workday transition, there was Paymentus. We actually have done a pretty significant job in implementing new systems that will help us with some of these financial controls so that it is no longer causing for us to do things manually, right? And I think that's what you see with the new system that DPW implemented. Obviously, Workday had its challenges, but ultimately Workday has allowed for there to be less issues like we saw with payroll, right, and the retroactive payments. So it takes time once we implement these systems for us to really train folks and really get the full value out of these systems. But to talk more broadly about just overall financial management and financial controls. Again, I talked about earlier some of the policy considerations. There's Shake and Bake, for example. They also collect cash, and it is a very small amount. Our pools collect cash. It is an extremely small amount. And in certain cases, we have moved to do those credit card payments so that we are limiting all of these small kind of functions across the city having to handle cash. And again, we talked about all of the costs that are associated with handling cash. So one, I think what we have undertaken as a part of the fee study is one, determining the universe of services where cash is still an option and where cash is the only option. There are still, 30% maybe of services where you can only pay for the service using cash, and credit card is not an option. And so we have now the universe of those services, again, which was determined through the fee study. The health department in particular is one where a good majority of their services you can only pay with cash. We want to eliminate that. We want there always to be an option to use credit cards. And then I think there's an opportunity for us to take a step further past that assessment to determine which are the core services where we should allow cash payment. So and I know this isn't talking about the full financial management controls. This is now talking specifically about cash management. But I think that is an important distinction to talk about, the work that has already gone into determining and assessing which services only allow cash payment. Overall, I would say financial controls. We at this body reviews our audit every single year, and there have been a number of financial controls that have been raised by the single auditor, each year. And each year we are aggressively working to eliminate those audit findings, which are kind of the across the board management challenges around financial controls. Now, as the auditor, as our single auditor has noted, it does take multiple years in order to fully eliminate an audit findings. But just last year, we were able to eliminate a number of audit findings, and I am hopeful through this closeout we'll be eliminating a few more audit findings. So I appreciate the question and do acknowledge, some of the challenges around financial management and financial controls. And happy to talk more about it. And if we should have an interim update on the landfill, happy to also talk about when we do that.
Appreciate that. Let me ask it slightly differently. I think about, to your point, Madam CA, within the pandemic, just a whole lot going on, and clearly a need for cities, not just Baltimore, but cities in general, to identify modernizations that need efficiencies that need to take place, the need to move away from handing cash, particularly when you have a viral virus that you don't want to be touching anything. And I think that's a generally positive thing. I think the city, though, has struggled as we have transitioned onto, you mentioned Workday. I think about Acela with the permitting. This system is now called Paymentus. Is that?
No, Paymentus is, no.
That's the citywide. For us, it's Paradigm.
Paradigm. Okay.
Yeah.
Paradigm. We have Paymentus for the citywide. I think part of what I'm trying to ask is, as we partner with various vendors, is there a standardization across agencies to try to hone it all in so that we're not having the health department doing a large part in cash and DPW moving to this Paradigm?
Well, Paradigm checks all of our influx and out of data that's coming in. So the trucks that are coming in, the weigh-in, all of that good stuff, we are able to put so then we put the money into the other system, the citywide system, to make sure that Workday right now is where the reconciliation should be occurring on that. But Paradigm is where we capture the data for us, because it's attached to our calibrated scales and all of that good stuff.
Yep.
So.
Yeah, just wondering about like standardization across systems.
Yeah. So thank you for that. And I'm going to actually evoke Frederick Douglass here, that there is no progress without struggle. Because you said struggle.
I thought you were going to go with power concedes nothing without demand.
Oh, well, that too. That's a really good one. But to your broader point, right? What I've mentioned in my remarks were multiple system implementations that we have done over the past 5 years with varying level of success as far as the initial implementation, right? But what I would say is the Workday, using Workday as an example, the Workday of today is not the Workday of 4 years ago when we implemented Workday, right? So there was struggle with the implementation, multiple years of struggle. And now we're actually seeing, Workday is the city system of record. So even in the case of Paradigm and the work that in this issue with the landfill, ultimately, the auditors looked at Workday and whether or not there was reconciliation in what appeared in Workday, right? So Workday is becoming that standardized system of record. There's still significant work that we have to do around Workday and it being that system of record across all entities and how folks are using Workday and how Workday is configured. But it is serving its purpose, or of what we intended to do was to create this standardized system of record across all city agencies. So I just wanted to note and acknowledge that. But to your point about the system modernizations, this administration came in and there were multiple modernizations that we had to undertake because most of our systems were, they were at the end of their useful life, right? Like when we think about Cobalt, when we think about, any number of systems, everything I kept hearing was, hey, like this thing is going to fall off a cliff if we don't do something tomorrow. And so we undertook massive system upgrades and modernization. And I do think, and I'm hopeful that, we're getting to the other side of that, including with Acela or, some of our other system implementations that have been challenging. But, to your point, to talk broadly, let's talk about policy, right? I think there's the system component of it, then there's the policy component, and then there's the human capital and the people component of the work, right? The people process technology is what I talk about. We talked about technology. When it comes to the processes, and I think this is what the auditor has been extremely helpful with doing, is that we're not following our own processes, right? And I think there's an opportunity for us to better document processes, which even the auditor in the previous example noted that, hey, we're not fully documenting every part of the process so that when a person leaves, there's a knowledge transfer and they can go back and look at the SOP that tells you exactly what to do. So I think there's opportunity there around standardization of SOPs and making sure that processes are properly documented. And then there is the training component. Now that we have this new policy, are people trained? I'll pick on myself as an example with the emergency procurement policy, right? I recently did a training with the cabinet to remind them of this is what we said we were going to do as a part of the emergency procurement policy. I don't know that it has fully trickled down to, the folks on the ground who are, processing procurements, for example. And so, I think that is also an area of opportunity for us to standardize training across the board, improving, which I think we have, but needing to do more even with those users of Workday. So just to round out your question, and I'm hopeful that I'm answering your question directly, my 3 buckets: process, people, technology. I think we are getting there with technology. We're not fully there. I don't know that our people are fully trained on the technology like they need to be. And so that is a bucket, of work. And I think the second bucket of work is the policy updates across the board. And then the third is the training and the human capital component of the work. And I think those 3 things together will get us to a place where we are able to have stronger financial controls across the city enterprise, and not just in the Department of Finance. It's in the folks who are taking a cash payment at Quarantine Landfill who don't have the same training as, staff in the accounting department and finance.
Appreciate that. I know my friend over here's ears perked up when he heard emergency procurement, which I know has been
I was still in the Frederick Douglass days, so.
fair. Since we went there on Douglas, I will go there with Baldwin, who, paraphrase a little bit, but one of my favorite quotes from him was, "Because I love my country, I reserve the right to criticize it," and I feel very similarly about my city. I think, to your point, Madam CA, we are getting there on technology, where I still continue to see some gaps. High level is around supervision, and going to a landfill, to all the points that have been raised before, to do small hauling and commercial and tipping and all the rest, is a complicated thing. And we all in the political space hear complaints from small haulers about how long it takes and it's inefficient, and can we make process improvements to get folks through the line quicker at some of the sites. So I think there's work to do there. I think, though, the piece that we, the city, and like down to the agency level, have to do a better job at controlling is supervision. And I think we experienced this on the other side of the sanitation house not too long ago, where we had profound challenges with our solid waste workers, getting supervision that in some cases was not only unhealthy but toxic, and creating situations where people were getting sick because of the way that they were working, and we're now adopting a heat policy and all the rest. But I just think the piece around training is critically important, but the piece around how we are supporting effective high-level supervision, and this is something I talk about with my team a lot, with leadership within my team, is like, how are we growing our people so that they can both get better at the job and feel good about the job and about the path and the career path that they're on. Because I think when you have looseness and laxity within a key function, which is collecting the money of a process, it speaks to a breakdown somewhere in that system. And so I think for me, as the council continues to do oversight, particularly when it comes to the Department of Public Works, where we've had a lot of conversations about supervision with solid waste and with our sanitation workers, I think continuing to strengthen that piece is going to be critically important. And there's no computer system, there's no technological efficiency that fixes that. It's got to be all the above. So that's what I got. Mr. Comptroller, we good? Madam CA, you want to close it out, or are you good? Great. Okay. Mr. Director?
Yeah, very briefly, one last thing I'd like to note is when the auditing team came to start this over a year ago, we talked about different areas that they might want to focus on, and this was deliberately one of the areas because, to your point, there was so much focus on routine services and so much improvements had already been made. We recognized that this was an area that needed to be focused on because we did not want to get that lost in the shuffle. So there was a very deliberate approach to really wanting to look into this. So again, going back to the conversation we had first this morning is, this is something that we really wanted to learn from so that we could then fix it.
Appreciate that, Director Garbark. Seeing and hearing no further questions from the board, this item is now noted.
Thank you.
Thank you. The next item on the non-routine agenda is from the Department of Finance under SB 26-12575. This is a request to note the Department of Finance's interim report stemming from the audit's report at the May 2026 Board of Estimates meeting that addressed inadequate collections practices in fiscal years 23 and 24. On behalf of Finance, we have Director Michael Moxton. Director Moxton, there you are. The floor is yours.
Thank you, and good morning again. My name is Michael Moxton, Director for the Department of Finance. Thank you for having us back to follow up on the finance performance audit, dealing with revenue, and kind of just continuing the conversation we were having just now. Revenue is how the city operates, and we are committed to collecting every penny that is owed to us. We responded in May to the audit of the revenue collections of the city covering the years fiscal 24 and fiscal year 23. And at the time, there was a lot of ongoing work to improve our revenue collection and to put processes in place that are going to get us all the way there. We committed then to come back and update the board on the progress that we've made just in the last couple of months and the progress that we are going to see ahead with these new procedures that we've put in place. So I'm going to go to the slide deck. If you can just advance the slide. Thank you. We're gonna talk about how we've actually done in the last couple of months. I'm going to give you a quick update on the numbers themselves, on the performance in revenue collections, and then we're going to cover the collection framework, the way that we actually go through the process from beginning to end in order to get those dollars. And finally, we'll talk about the findings themselves and the progress that we've made on the individual findings. Next slide. Thank you. So just for a little bit of context, the City of Baltimore collects over 98% of the dollars owed to us across the general fund. And this is near the top of our peer group across cities nationally. 95 to 98% is typical. We are above 98%. We take this very seriously, and we try as hard as we can to get to 100%. So this conversation is going to be about that last 2%. Specifically, the audit was about miscellaneous revenue. So this is everything other than taxes, not grants, but things like pilot agreements, things like the conduit and Miss Utility, things that have complex underlying agreements that have to be regularly updated and monitored. And in this narrower, more complex piece of revenue, our collection rate is still relatively high. It's at 95%, but we are working to get it higher. In fact, it was 94% when we last spoke to you back in May. It's at 95% today and continuing to climb. Next slide. So since we last came in front of the board, there has been progress on the numbers. In any given fiscal year, if you look at all of the revenue that is outstanding, it had ranged as of May between $14 and $18 million. We have since gotten additional collections. We have since closed out some cases administratively. And so for the past few years, that range has now fallen to between $9 and $12 million outstanding for a given year. These numbers will continue to fall as we go through the process that I'll take you through in a second, and we intend to get every last dollar. All right, next slide. A big part of how we do it is collaboration with the law department. We have in the past year been together tackling the largest outstanding cases, pursuing legal action, and basically just entering into negotiations and conversations, getting it to collections for those largest cases. In the last few months, starting in June, we have begun referring every miscellaneous case that is owed to the city to the law department for non-lienable accounts. And just to quickly explain, we break out all of the different fees that are owed to us into lienable and non-lienable. If it's lienable, things that oftentimes have to do with vacant houses, things like cleanup, demolition, then it's subject to the tax sale process and we collect it that way. If it's non-lienable, then we pursue it through the law department through legal action. And it's those non-lienable accounts that we now universally refer to the law department. And going forward, we will be automatically referring all non-lienable miscellaneous accounts to the law department at set dates on a 45-day cycle. With that, we've been able to get actual revenue in the door. There have been several major settlements that we got. We've also identified cases that we could close out administratively because the underlying activity stopped or the contract changed, and we can clear that off the books, and that is allowing us to close that gap on the amount of money that's owed to us. Next slide. So we are going to take you through the framework for how this is actually done and talk a little bit about the best practices that we've put in place. With that, I'm going to bring up Deputy Director Ioana Moisidis.
Good morning again, Ioana Moisidis, Deputy Director. So before we get into the updates on the audit corrective actions, did want to step back a little and just high level talk about the revenue optimization framework, which is really broader than the audit corrective actions, because of course the audit dealt with a very particular small subset of city bills, and what we're looking at and addressing is really broader than that. So the framework that you see on the slide takes from the GFOA, so Government Finance Officers Association standards, which are really best practices for governments, and those management guidelines, and you can see you have every step there from billing initiation, accurate billing, delinquency monitoring, collections and referral to finally write-off and resolution. And so those guidelines really emphasize timely invoicing, defined delinquency procedures, legal action within the statute of limitations, and regular write-off review. And so this work is really building a sustainable, standards-aligned billing and collections infrastructure with work that began before the audit and continues now. In terms of some of the improvements that we'd like to update since May, next slide, we have our billing improvement strategy. And so again, to reiterate, we've heard a lot today about process, people, and technology. BAPS has drafted, implemented, distributed, and trained policies and SOPs on establishing bills, establishing loans, canceling invoices, establishing loan receivables. And I heard a comment earlier about how we collaborate citywide and whether their efforts with other city agencies. Important to point out or to note, while we were in this call, the Workday Finance User Group met. It's a weekly group, has about 350 invitees. I think around 104 were on today. And that group is just one of the regularly scheduled cadence of meetings that brings together people who are doing finance work in the city to the standards, policy guidelines, people that are doing the work within the Department of Finance. So back to the slide. Short-term BAPS centralized billing request submissions. BAPS created a billing terms template for certain bill types to validate billing requirements so that as agencies are requesting it, they're receiving standardized documentation in one place. And we have worked with BSIT, so our partners in information technology, and I am very excited that we have created a streamlined portal form template that includes validation methods, includes some internal controls like certain fields must be filled out, as well as requiring agencies to submit documentation and identify key terms that are possible billing terms. So for example, escalation clauses, specifically identifying where that is located in the document when they submit it to the Bureau of Accounting and Payroll Services. This will be put into place in September. So this is, you're going to hear more about next steps. I wouldn't look at this as the final state, but I would look at it as the very first thing we did in May was establish that standardized email, but we knew that wasn't enough. So adding on to that, we had a very low cost, low kind of technology, easy solution that we believe is an easy change management solution as well. That will be the interim step, which is this portal for certain types, leases and loans. And then the next step is looking at where do we go next? I'll talk about that in another slide. But before I do that, I want to talk about the revenue collection. So collecting the revenue improvement strategy. So BAPS and BRC, the Bureau of Accounting and Payroll Services, I'm sorry, I should have mentioned that before, and the Bureau of Revenue Collections have begun the 45-day notice to debtors. The Bureau of Revenue Collections is partnering with city agencies, including DOT, Real Estate, DPW, and DGS, as is BAPS. And then both BAPS and BRC are partnering with BSID to automate the delinquency processes in both the mainframe and Workday. And then, as mentioned earlier, BRC is partnering with the Law Department to initiate legal action. Next slide. So on to the progress by finding and summary. So sorry for the small print. It's very difficult for me as well, but wanted to get all of the findings in a quick, concise slide that would really highlight that we have completed all our stated corrective actions on time, the ones that we promised to do by this date. And we're working to complete other actions according to the stated deadlines. So those completed actions include training staff on the proper establishment of bills, developing policies and standard operating procedures on initiating and monitoring billing, delinquent bills, implementing a loan management accounting policy, and implementing additional controls in the system regarding invoice cancellation, as well as establishing a write-off policy. We've distributed new policies citywide to stakeholder agencies, including those trainings and some one-on-one sessions. That work will continue. And we've implemented batch search tools in revenue collections and additional reporting tools to allow us to more easily pull reports from the mainframe. Next slide is next steps. And so I sort of referenced this earlier. We have the next steps in terms of what was promised in the audit corrective actions. So accounting related, reconciling outstanding loan balances and adjusting for accurate FY26 reporting. This has to do with how we record receivables. We will review updates with audits. So our goal is to, by mid-September, work with the audits team to give them our packet of where we are at. I mentioned earlier with payroll audit, giving the policies so that we're not waiting for the next audit to come around before they look at those. And then specifically in terms of technology, I noted that we had progress already with the centralized AR billing requests, working with BSID to develop the submission portal for certain bill types. We've also worked with BSID, and this work began well before May, on continuing mainframe data review and updated reporting tools. And then working with the Mayor's Office of Performance Innovation and looking at ways to more real-time be able to pull and analyze data. So next steps, as we review options for mainframe billing conversion for non-lienable bills, and this was planned to be evaluated by March 2027 and then implemented by August 2027. We are working with partners in BSID, I mentioned, law, and agencies to evaluate technology options. And this includes evaluation of Workday, evaluation of visual lease, mainframe improvements, and even looking at blockchain options. And I would say the theme behind all of the things that we're looking at is evaluating it from the perspective of, are we maximizing the use of technology that's cost-effective, efficient, avoids duplication or duplicative systems, and ensures that the full revenue cycle, that all of our partners need things from the system, whether that's initiation, collection, delinquency, when it comes to law, are taken into account. And with that, I'd like to turn the next slide, with the board's indulgence, over to the Law Department to just walk through just one of those options, what it looks like.
Not that black screen.
Oh, it is there. There we go.
There we go. All right, thank you. Good morning, Council President, City Administrator, Comptroller number 2, Comptroller number 1, Matthew Bradford, Chief of Staff for the Law Department. I think I'm going to go back to the course of thank yous from earlier. I really do want to thank the finance team, who's a very important partner of the Law Department as well as audits, for giving us the opportunity to work with them to make sure that we are doing the best to strengthen our operations and collaboration. As was mentioned earlier, Law and Finance closely correspond on delinquent bills and related documents that are important for both agencies' work. One of the things that we have explored, as the Deputy Director mentioned, is working with a third-party vendor in BSIT on potential technological options that would help streamline our processes, particularly for the Law Department. If desirable, this type of technology would reduce manual inputs and automate some of the data, information, and records that we need to review in order to pursue legal action on certain types of matters. That would include the life cycle of a delinquent bill. We could just look into a system and see what has BSIT already done on this, what is left outstanding, what's the amount. Looking at other, when you're talking about one particular person that owes the city, they may owe things on multiple fronts, right? So being able to understand in totality what is actually owed to the city by this particular individual or entity, as well as what critical deadlines are approaching for the Law Department to sort of raise our awareness. So I know that there's been a lot of presentations today, and I want to be very brief, but a couple of the prototypes that we put up on the screen are only conceptual. These are not real companies. This is just sort of an idea that we had got in working with the vendor about what we could actually have the Law Department reviewing sort of at its step in the process to know what's going on. Again, this would include number of days outstanding, what particular type of invoice are we talking about, how long since Finance has sent their initial sort of correspondence or communication to the debtor seeking to be paid, so that law cannot duplicate those efforts, but sort of do what we would do in our process with regard to demand. We can go to the next one. Just so I can show you the second module. So that's another type of module that we've been thinking about. Again, I hope you can see it. I will share it with this board if the print is too small. But it would allow us to be able to track the process in close coordination with finance to be able to do our important work. So again, this is simply a part of Finance and Law's ongoing effort to innovate, and only should be viewed in concept, and we will continue to try to develop that with the finance team if it is something that they think and this board thinks would be helpful. Thank you.
Appreciate that. Appreciate the improved collaboration. Are you all still?
Yes, sir. That concluded the presentation.
Got it. All right. Thank you for the presentation. Do want to note and appreciate improvements made. This was a very concerning audit, and the BOE meeting that we had previously on this was not great. We had a subsequent budget committee conversation about this, and so I do want to acknowledge improvements made as well as what appears to be increased collaboration with law, which is really important in this case when it comes to, again, making sure every single dollar that the city is owed is collected so that we can fund the things that our government needs to fund. I kind of want to ask about the numbers a little bit. Your report explains what you all sent to my staff, that we resolved about $9 million of the uncollected debt in a process you called administratively resolved. Can you explain what that means and what we're doing to ensure accurate billing information is going out to customers and then reflected in our internal bookkeeping?
Sure. So thank you for the opportunity to lend more depth to it. And again, as part of that revenue optimization framework, in addition to our efforts to rebuild open accounts, it was important to step back and ensure, right, again, GFOA standards. There's accurate invoicing, review payments collected, and open invoices so that payments are credited properly. The work is really key in terms of data accuracy. So we identified prior systems transition data cleanup and completed, for example, removal of duplicates. Some of that administrative cleanup also involved applying payments. So a payment was received, it was credited to the proper work tags, but that additional step of applying it to the specific invoice was not completed. There were cases where there was a settlement that included 20 invoices, but it was credited just to one invoice. So some of that work is what we reference administrative cleanup.
Understood. Just a bit of a check for understanding here on my part. So are we certain that the numbers have now been fully reconciled?
We are certain the numbers are fully reconciled in Workday. I will note that we have gone back multiple fiscal years. So for example, when we talked about sending 1,100 FBLNs out in collaboration with the law department, those bills actually were an extended period. They were not just 23, 24, and 25, but represented, I think we had one from FY20, and then 22 to 25. So the work is spread across many fiscal years, and so a portion of that work continues, noting that we do have also the mainframe work that is going on, and that mainframe work is going on across bill types, lienable and non-lienable, and is pretty extensive because the goal is to have an end-user system or portal that is more user-friendly. And by user-friendly, I mean we're not calling BSIT and having them run a report. We are actually able to look in a modern-day end-user type of portal and pull information more readily. And I do want to point out, that's why you'll see, if you look at fiscal 23 on the chart, you'll see that the largest difference, that is slide fiscal year detail progress report. You see that larger number, that is the transition from the mainframe and core integrator to Workday. So that's the transition and system cleanup that you see. And that's,
put it back up.
oh, I'm sorry. But for reference, the title page is Fiscal Year Detail Progress Report.
Understood. Got it.
Should be the fourth slide. I think
What's the title?
it's slide 4.
Yeah, slide 4.
Fiscal Year Detail Progress Report. And it should be slide 4.
Yeah. Okay. Other questions from the board, Mr. Comptroller?
Yeah, I think. Thank you, Mr. President. Following up on that last larger bit, you said 9 million was administratively resolved. Is that 9 million of the 14.5 million on this chart?
No, so when I was referencing
Okay.
9 million, if you look on this slide at fiscal 23,
Okay.
you see that what we reported in May and what we reported in July, the difference is about 9.1 million.
Okay.
And that was what that was the 9 million.
Ah, okay.
I was calling out that for fiscal year 23, you saw a larger difference because the administrative cleanup.
So 9 million of the 18.6.
Of the total 14.5. So reading along the bottom for
Yeah.
fiscal 23, the difference between what was reported in May as outstanding and what was reported in July was 9.1. In for fiscal 24 bills, that was 3.8.
Maybe I should start with a vocabulary question. Is administratively resolved the same as collected, or does it include collections? Like, does administratively resolved, for example, on the next slide, there's a reference to 6 abated invoices because they were billed to a terminated franchise agreement. So we had these 6 outstanding invoices, but they didn't really owe us the money.
Correct.
So that was an administratively
That would be an
resolved.
administrative resolve, but as would if we had previously collected the money, it's collected, it's applied to the work tags, but that invoice was not cleared.
That would count
be
as administratively resolved.
So we
Well,
were trying to distinguish actual cash
so-
collections
So
versus,
are invoices resolved through settlement and then paid? Is that administratively resolved?
no,
Ah,
if it
okay.
was new. If
Okay,
that was a
so
new.
that's
what we
new
were-
actual money.
Correct.
That
So
counts
we
as
were trying-
collections, not
we were
this.
tr-
Okay.
Yes, we were trying
Okay.
to
That's what I was trying to do.
distinguish. So for example, if tomorrow the law department were to enter into a settlement, collect the money and say, apply this to these 20 invoices, that would be new cash received for
So-
us. That would be a collection.
So is it fair to describe administratively resolved as we weren't actually owed this money?
Yeah, and if I could, as a follow-up to where I think the comptroller is going, I guess, like, how much of that 9 million was real money?
The 9 million for the FY '23 was
If we could
about
go back, yeah.
$500,000 for Workday and 371,000 for mainframe.
So can I add what I think is a little bit of
Madam
clarity here?
Administrator.
Sure. So just broad framing here, just as a general accounting and fiscal management within, a government, I think there's always going to be some level of uncollectible debt, right? For any number of reasons. There could be disputes on invoices or contracts, right? There are any number of issues that might result in what I would hope to be a pretty small percentage of uncollectible debt or bad debt that you eventually write off, right? That's kind of standard practice. Now, obviously, we want to be within GFOA standards when it comes to that, but that is something that will exist. Going back to the numbers, this 9.4 million and this administratively resolved piece of it, I want to make sure that, one, I'm understanding, but also attempt to provide some level of clarity. So I think what the team is saying is that that 9.1 million, that the vast majority of that were things that had to be resolved administratively, meaning they were not properly, the payment was received, but it wasn't properly applied, for example, might be something that happens administratively. There was a previous agreement with the law department, for example, a settlement agreement that might not have been properly noted or applied, not a new settlement agreement, but a past settlement agreement. It's all of these kind of, yes.
Is that?
Mr. Comptroller.
Yeah, I think we do need to get clarity on that part of if there was a previous settlement that hadn't been properly recorded or recognized in some fashion, that would count as administratively resolved.
Correct.
But if there was
New cash.
that counts as new collections.
Correct.
Yes.
Okay.
So just maybe, and I think this might be helpful, anything that is new cash that is coming in is a collections. We collected that new money. Anything that, like, on the administrative portion of managing this, meaning we didn't properly note something, but we did receive it, or, something along those lines, that's administrative. It's not new cash that's coming in the door off of something we did.
So then,
Yeah, so just for a slight step back. So to your framing here, how much was bad debt and how much was erroneous billing out of the 9.1?
So let's go to can we do the total difference for FY '23, '24,
Sure.
'25 is the 14.5. Of that, 1.4 was new collections, and 13.1 was administrative cleanup.
Mr. Comptroller?
I think that may have been the number I was trying to get at. So, I mean, and I'm trying to put this like a straightforward, like, so on some level, except for the fact that it was featured in the meeting, we shouldn't really be looking at the May snapshot because those numbers are technically not right.
What we were trying to show with this slide
Yeah.
was what has changed since then. And we have a whole bunch of things on the corrective actions and the steps taken. But in terms of the revenue, we wanted to show you what the impact of some of that work is.
Yeah,
Right.
so, Mr. can I? Oh,
Yeah,
go
go
ahead. Okay.
Madam CA.
So I would not say the May numbers weren't right. They were the May numbers, right? And there was work that was done between May and July, a bit of a sprint that was done between May and July to do the administrative cleanups and to also go after collections. So I think the team noted a number of final bill and legal notices that went out that resulted in the 1 point whatever in collections. There was the administrative cleanup that was done. So it's not that those numbers were right. It was those were the numbers in May, and then by July, given all of these efforts, here are the new updated numbers which we committed to.
Right was an
providing.
overly simplistic
Okay.
word, and I apologize. I'm groping for vocabulary.
Oh, no worries.
On this, which is so I'll spell it out rather than try to make it too succinct. So the May snapshot included a lot of data that had not been properly scrubbed. I guess maybe that would be a better way to put, for example, on the next slide, it talks about of the 44 largest outstanding invoices, it turned out 6 of them were from franchise agreements that had been terminated.
Right.
So we shouldn't really be expecting that money. That's what I'm trying to get at, in terms of when I say those numbers aren't right, I mean, they were accurate at that time, but we have since, in drilling down and doing research, found that they're not valid numbers. But the July numbers, and if we could go back to slide 4 for a second. So the July numbers have been fully examined, and you've had time to make sure that those reflect a more accurate. I mean, I'm struggling with we're not going to come back 3 months from now and say that July snapshot of 9.4 should really have been 8.2, because you've done that work.
I'll let Michael go, but I have thoughts. Go ahead.
Thank you. These numbers represent the most updated information that we have. And I want to, for a moment, go back to the original audit. One of the audit findings kind of specifically spoke to the fact that we, as a city, need better controls on what we are tracking as owed to us. And the improvement here is kind of a direct repercussion of the things we've put in place since the audit, which is tightening up exactly how we know, how we track, how we record when something is owed and when something isn't owed. So as of May, those were the numbers in our system of record that represented our latest understanding. As of July, these are the numbers that today represent our latest understanding. To your question, we do believe that we we got it all, but I want to be kind of careful here because this is a very complex environment where agreements are regularly changing.
Yeah, I wasn't going to say we have it all because I don't. So I think my response to that is collections are ever changing. Like the numbers are not going to continue to remain the same. To Michael's point, we could be in active litigation regarding a contract dispute, and those numbers are going to change. I think why you see the large jump in FY23 is the older the debt it is, or the older the debt is, the more likely it is that we will need, that it is bad debt, that we will need to write it off, that it is uncollectible. Of course, we're going to do everything in our power to collect it. Now, what we hope to see is in the more recent fiscal years, like 25 and 24, that those numbers don't fluctuate as much. But again, as kind of the behind-the-scenes actions are taking place, then your numbers are going to shift. But they shouldn't shift significantly like we're seeing in FY23, if that makes sense.
That does.
And they shouldn't, I'm sorry, the last piece of this too is they should not shift as much in workday. I think the other part is because the more technical component of this is the lienable versus non-lienable, which you have in the mainframe system, which is more likely, I would say, to be less likely to be collected. If we can put a lien against it through tax sale or otherwise, it is a higher likelihood that we'll collect.
All right.
So,
I'm trying to keep it moving. You got?
I got it. I got stuff.
All right.
Okay.
Fire away.
So I think I'm almost there in terms of understanding this chart specifically. What's not on the page, but which Ms. Masoidi said, was there's been 1.4 million of new money collected since May. Okay, so out of the 48.4 number that we had totaled in May, out of that, 13.1 was administratively resolved, and 1.4 is new money that we've actually collected. And I guess that's where I'm trying to get a sense of, is that in keeping with the percentages of collections that the standard you're trying to hit from GFOA of between 95 and 98%, where does that new money get you to in terms of what we collected in miscellaneous funds during those 3 years?
The new money, well, it brought our overall miscellaneous collection up to 95%. It was about 94, got up to 95.
Okay.
And I should mention the 95 to 98, that's kind of an overall standard. This is, to be frank, very, very deep in the weeds. Very few jurisdictions actually publish this level of data. Our goal remains to collect everything.
Sure.
Just want to be clear. But yeah, this latest push got us from 94% to 95% specifically within miscellaneous revenue.
Okay, so that was where I was trying to understand in I guess kind of a big picture way. I did have a couple specific questions about the presentation. On the next slide, the 6 abated invoices, were they all from the same terminated franchise agreement, or were they were there multiple terminated franchise agreements with multiple bills that turned out to not be correct?
They were from the same.
They were all from the same. Okay, that makes a lot of sense. All right. In the next slide, you mentioned that under billing initiation, you're going to be centralizing loan/lease intake. How does that work with, on slide 8, the BRC partnering with real estate? Like, how is that going to work?
Sure. So that was referencing a very specific thing that we agreed to do in the corrective action plan, which was what the audit found was the request for billing for those types kind of goes to one person in BAPS, or maybe it goes to another person. So by centralized intake, it was really as basic as setting up a centralized email box that multiple members of BAPS, the Bureau of Accounting and Payroll, could access and use to process. So that was the very first step.
So that's the that's
Wait,
centralizing.
That is the first step,
Okay.
as in, that's what we did in May.
Okay.
Then in my presentation, as I noted, we worked with BSIT to develop for the types that we realized were the biggest challenges for us, and also for law, which was the follow-up on the leases. And so we have the portal, and the portal is, I'm able as the agency to go on, I complete the form, and the form has the required field that BAPS needs to bill. So for
Okay.
example, before, BAPS would get a contract, they would get the lease, and it would say, bill this. It would not identify.
And BAPS would have to dig through the lease to
Would dig
figure
through
out.
the lease and
Okay.
read and try to figure out what was appropriate.
okay.
This kind of standardizes that
Sure.
template so that the agency is doing that first review. When BAPS gets it, then BAPS still has to validate. They still have to look at the contract and look at what the agency requested and see if they match, or ask questions as appropriate. But that allows also the documentation to be stored in one place. It issues an identifier for that particular lease. Now, this work continues, so that's sort of the interim step. Low cost, easy on the change management, existing technology the city has, and really is light years ahead of what we were doing. So that's a good interim step. And then more longer term, and as you referenced, the folks in the comptroller's office, real estate, were very receptive. So we now have access to visual leases and are
Yeah,
using
that was what I was
that.
going to ask is, could you
And-
just pull this information out of Visual Lease?
Well,
good,
and so
okay.
that's what we're evaluating. Can that be done? And, you know, how does that, does it just pull from visual lease? Is there a step where it needs to go to the agency? So we are keeping open our options. But because what we do want to do as a city is not duplicate, find low-cost methods that are effective, and then meet the needs. And whatever that option is, and if it's blockchain, if it's visual lease, if it's Workday billing to contract, or if it is, you know, this SharePoint solution, we are going to utilize it. But we wanted to continue to make steps kind of as we were doing that evaluation. And so this was sort of the interim step. And so that's what we referred to.
As soon as he said that the folks in
bullet.
real estate were receptive, the
Yes.
tension started to drain out because.
Very receptive.
It's just, I was nervous at the idea of having them fill out a separate form of the same information that they'd put into Visual Lease already, because they get really cranky when they're asked to duplicate effort.
And that was actually pointed out by the able secretary of the board.
Excellent, okay. And then the last question I have, and this is slides 11 and 12, the program that Matthew walked us through. I guess my question is, where is the data that populates this coming from? Is that automatically being pulled out of Workday by whatever platform this is? Or is somebody entering this information into the new platform?
It's pulled from our own systems.
It's, okay,
Yes, it would be pulled from existing systems,
Okay.
not creating a new one.
excellent, okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. All right. We good? I don't want to belabor this, but one more question, just for the sake of it. You may have touched on this, but of the 599 eligible invoices left, how much money do we expect to actually collect?
I have that. Someone famous, I don't know, said it's in the binder. They were very important. So for the 599, it is about 7 million. I will, I'm sorry, I apologize, 5.4 million. And to the CA's point, this work is ongoing, like it is going on daily. And so the numbers are changing as we get adjustments. And I'm actually proud of that because it means we're taking the steps to address it and to work through the process. But that would be the amount for the 599.
Thank you. I believe the quote was "binders full of women," and it was a horrible quote by Mitt Romney.
That was absolutely not what I was referring to.
Okay. That's the one that
Oh,
I remember.
no. I'm not smart enough to make that joke.
I didn't.
Or do that
I don't know what
callback.
he's
No,
talking
that was
about.
not me.
Yeah.
I was thinking more of like my
Yeah.
school teacher or, court prep. Yeah.
Understood.
Thank you for letting me clear that record because that was not in my mind.
But it's in the binder is a very common expression here in Baltimore city government, or at least it was.
It
for the
was when
first-
we had
For the
binders.
first 25 years, yeah.
I just remember being a very bad quote by a presidential contender of yesteryear. That said, thank you for coming back and addressing this with us. If there are no further questions, which I hope there are not, this item is noted. All right. The last, I believe, item on the non-routine agenda is from DPW under SB 26-12077. This is a request to note an amendment to an emergency procurement agreement with Professional Startup and Operating Services, Inc., in the amount of $12,877,953.44. On behalf of DPW, we have there you go. There he is. Deputy Director Alan Robinson. Deputy Director Robinson, the floor is yours.
Again, good morning, Council President, Madam CA, Mr. Comptroller, and Honorable Board, as well as our Comptroller for the day. Good to see you this time around. Before us, and let me get my notes together, I do apologize. Everything was lined up, and then the computer decided to shut down because it was sitting there for a moment.
We've all been there.
All right, so today we are talking about SB 26-12077. This is the amendment number 3 to the Emergency Procurement Agreement for Professional Startup and Operating Services, also known as ProStart. Right now, the board is being requested to note the third amendment to the Emergency Procurement Agreement with ProStart, and the timeline is from October 2025 to February of 2027. This transaction amount is in the amount of $12,877,953.44. We're requesting the notation of this emergency procurement contract under PO 011099 to continue providing operational and maintenance service at the Back River Wastewater Treatment Plant, as well as staffing augmentation at the headworks and denitrification filter facilities. These services are necessary to maintain continuous plant operations and support regulatory permit compliance. This is going back in 2022 when we identified that we're experiencing severe and sustained staffing shortages. And this was based upon our 2022 consent order and 2023 consent decree. So as a result, we have relied on temporary staffing support to maintain essential operations and remain in compliance with regulatory requirements. So today I want to talk a little bit about what that is. Again, critical staffing needs in 2022. Original agreement started in May 2023. We're supporting increased to include maintenance support due to vacancies, and it was a critical need as compliance issues could pose public health and environmental risk. This next slide gives you a visual of the process. When we talk about your sewer, right? We're talking about the wastewater that is leaving homes, businesses, and the like. This is where it goes, all right? And this is the process map, all of the things that it has to go through. The first thing it hits is the headworks unit. Headworks unit acts as triage and moves things around. So I wanted to give you an overview of all of the machinations that are happening at the Back River Wastewater Treatment Plant so that we have an understanding of, if we go to the next slide, what ProStart was actually supporting us in. They are supporting us in headworks, the equalization tanks, the coarse screens, deep well tanks, all of that good stuff. We have licensed operators that are supporting this 24/7, and it's required by our consent decrees. They were also supporting us in the activated sludge in Plant 4. This was Part C of that process. And then they were also supporting us in the denitrification facilities, not only staffing, but also the maintenance of these areas. So one of the things we want to point out, while we do have this notation of this emergency agreement, the reason it went from October until February of 2027 is because we're in the process of actually putting out an RFP for a reduced scale of services because we were able to successfully bring in the activated sludge reactors in-house. So we have in-house staff working and supporting that. And now, as of this month, we are also assuming the operation of the denitrification facility. So we've taken two of the three from ProStart for this. And as such, we will continue to require their support. We wanted to push this out into February with the understanding. You good? Okay. I just want to make sure we're clear. So we wanted to push this out to February simply because we are giving ourselves enough time to put the RFP out, get the bids in, and then award the bids so that we still have maintained critical coverage for this operation. And so that actually concludes the initial slides, and I want to open up for questions, and I may be able to provide some additional support from there.
Hearing and seeing no questions, you want to provide additional?
Well, just the additional is that, as I stated, we are in the process of trying to hire new staff to support this, right? And we've increased our Be More Wise training program internally so that we are now providing consistent training to operators to bring that other piece, that last piece, the headworks operation in-house with the goal that ultimately we'll be able to take this over completely.
Got it.
So,
Madam CA.
So just to note, so when we go into these staff augmentation contracts, especially when it comes to the water utility, the goal is always to get us in compliance and to help us stabilize a service and to ultimately transition off those staff augmentation contracts. So Mr. Comptroller, you should recall, a couple years ago when, these staff augmentation contracts started coming through. So given the fact that we were, under a consent decree and we had to move very quickly to try to get the plant into compliance, we moved into these contracts. What I think is important to note today is that, yes, we moved to have the ProStart manage these services within the plant, but to the Deputy Director's point, we have now successfully transitioned a great portion of those services off of the temporary contractors to do those in-house, which will start to save us costs again. And then we're working on the final, kind of the headworks, which is the final operations to bring those in-house. But again, it just goes back to, what we said a couple years ago about, hey, this is like stabilization, this is compliance, and the goal is to bring all of these services back in-house. So I just wanted to note that.
Noted. All right. With that, I will note this item. Thank you, Deputy Director Robinson.
Thank you.
I'm going to quickly turn it to Mr. Comptroller.
Okay, yeah, so as you know, we have run significantly longer than we usually run, and so for anyone who's here for bid openings, there's going to be a brief delay. We will expect bid openings to start more like 12:15 than noon because we need to get in here and start putting some stuff together. So thank you for your understanding. And just as a reminder, when we move to e-bidding and we have electronic bid openings, the length of the board meeting will not affect bid openings. That's it. Thank you.
So
Thank
the
you.
board meetings can go even longer at that point.
Well, okay, good side, bad side.
Thank you, Mr. Comptroller. Thank you, Mr. Robinson. Thank you to all the board members. Thank you to Braden. Hope you learned something today about James Baldwin, Frederick Douglass, or Mitt Romney. We appreciate you joining us. Thank you to everyone for tuning in today. As there is no more business before the board, we will now adjourn this meeting. The next regular meeting of the Board of Estimates will occur on Wednesday, September 2nd, 2026 at 9 a.m. I thank everyone for participating and tuning in.
Hi, TV 25. Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for your patience. We had a long-running Board of Estimates meeting this morning, and it took us a while to open bid documents for what will be 8 bid announcements today. This is the Board of Estimates bid opening for August 19th, 2026, and we do have 3 addenda to announce first. For Department of Public Works, SC 866, replacement of Southwest Diversion Pressure Sewer, Phase 1, Frankfurt Avenue. This bid will now be opened on September 2nd, 2026. For procurement, RFQ 000770, supply and delivery of bulk chemicals. This bid will now be opened on October 7th, 2026. And for procurement, RFQ 000840, bituminous paving materials, hot and cold patch. This will now be opened on September 2nd, 2026. So again, today we do have 8 bids to open, and the first up is Department of Public Works, SC 1030R, on-call rehabilitation, repairs, improvements, and condition assessment of sanitary sewer laterals, various locations. So up first.
The first bid, good afternoon. The first bid is from Spinello's Companies.
And Odd, I think these are totals like always.
And there is a requirement for a bid bond.
Okay.
Spinello has a bid bond.
May I have a copy, please? A copy of the due? Thank you.
The amount is $13,293,300 and no cents.
That number was 13,293,300.00.
Yes.
And we have one original and one duplicate.
One yes.
And is that it's clearly marked, I have it.
Yes.
Very good. Okay, thanks, Charlotte. Okay.
Next one. The next company is Commercial Utilities, an original and dupe with a bid bond.
Thank you. Mine is not clearly marked dupe. Let me double, oh wait, inside it is, never mind. I'm on
Okay.
page 3, I see it marked duplicate. Go
Okay.
ahead.
And that total is $10,985,227.
And that number was 10,985, comma, 227.10.
Yes, 10 cents.
Okay.
And that's an original and a dupe?
That bidder was Commercial Utilities.
Yes.
For $10,985,227.10.
Next bidder, Mobile Dredging and Video Pipe, Inc. I have an original and a dupe.
Thank you.
I also have a bid bond. And their total is $14,785,507 and no cents.
Okay, that number was 14, comma, oops. Sorry, something. bear with me, I'm fixing my own typo. That number was 14,785,507.00.
Correct.
Okay, thank you. That bidder was Mobile Dredging and Video Pipe for $14,785,507.00.
Our next bid is Anchor Construction Corporation. Give me 1 second here. An original and a dupe. An original and one dupe with a bid bond. And that total is $15,828,567.00.
That number was 15,828,567.00.
Yes.
That bidder was Anchor Construction Corporation for $15,828,567.00.
Correct.
Thank you.
And the last bidder on this item is Monumental Paving and Excavating, Inc., an original and a dupe.
Thank you.
I do have a bid bond, and the total amount is $12,975,000.00.
That number was 12,975,000.00.
Yes.
And that final bidder was Monumental Paving and Excavating, Inc., for $12,975,000.00.
Yes.
And that was our final of 5 bidders.
Yes.
For SC 1030R, on-call rehabilitation, repairs, improvements, and condition assessment of sanitary sewer laterals at various locations.
Yes.
Up next, for the Bureau of Procurement, we have RFQ 000810, on-call moving, hauling, shelving, and storage.
The first bidder on this item is POI Installation Group, LLC. I have an original and 3 dupes.
Any flash drives?
I didn't see any flash drives with that. Nope.
Okay.
Now, what is this? Okay, and this.
There's an estimated total. Should we be looking at our colleagues in the audience? Should we be reading the estimated total? Because it also shows
It's an item B.
items.
Which agency is this?
It's going to be a combination of both.
Okay,
But you can read the total because that's going to be part of the audit.
got it, okay.
Okay, well, I'm going to read this slowly. 1, comma, 210, comma, 816.
I see that too.
Period 50.
There are multiple decimal points. It's a little confusing. But I think I see the same number because it's just more zeros. So it's 1, comma, 210, comma, 816.50.
Yes.
Okay, that's what I think the number is also. So that was POI Installation Group LLC for what appears to be an estimate of $1,210,816.50.
Yes.
And of course, the agency will be reviewing all of this carefully.
Thank you. Our next bidder on this item is Walters Relocation, Inc., with a flash drive.
Thank you.
They have an original and 2 duplicates.
Thank you.
Okay,
Did you
and
see all the dupes clearly marked?
they're going to be all those copies.
Yeah, I'm not sure if these are,
It's the same thing.
I don't see them stamped duplicate odd. Is yours,
Sometimes they're not stamped, those are.
yeah, we won't be, I don't see stamps on these, so we won't be able to retain them. Unless I'm missing it. I don't see, do you see a stamp? Yeah. Yeah, they have to, if they don't mark it, we can't retain them. So just, and we explain this just about every bid opening. If duplicates aren't clearly marked, we can't make them publicly available. So we're, in this case, going to say that we have 3 originals because we don't have any copies. There are copies, but they're not clearly marked as copies. So all of these will be sent to the agency. And I'm ready when you are, on.
Okay, and that, again, that's Walters Relocations, Inc.
Yep.
And their bid amount is $252,500.50.
That number was 252,500.50.
Yes.
Okay, and that bidder was Walters Relocation, Inc., and that was our final of 2 bidders
Yes.
for RFQ 000810, on-call moving, hauling, shelving, and storage. Up next, we have for procurement RFQ 000822, testing, repairs, and replacement of water meters.
Okay, let me see. The first bidder on this contract is Tailor Made Industries, Inc., doing business as Taylor Meter Technologies. I have an original and 2 copies. Thank you.
Thank you. I see they are clearly marked.
And their bid amount is, let's see, $2,753,850 and no cents.
That number was 2,753,850.00.
Yes.
That bidder was Tailor Made Industries for $2,753,850.00. We
Yes.
didn't have a flash drive for that one, do we?
No flash drive.
Okay.
Final bidder on this contract is Vanguard Utility Service, Inc., with a flash drive, an original, and 2 copies.
Thank you.
And give me 1 second, I'm looking for the
Yeah,
price.
I'm looking for the pricing too.
Because it's not marked.
Is it way at the end?
The total bid amount for this item is $889,855 and no cents.
That number was 889,855.00.
Yes,
That bidder was Vanguard Utility Service, Inc. for $889,855.00.
that's correct.
And that was our final of 2 bidders for RFQ 000822, testing, repairs, and replacement of water meters.
Yes.
Up next for procurement is RFQ 000832, background check services. Did I put the emphasis on the wrong word? Background check services.
Okay. The first bidder on this contract is Security Walls LLC.
Is this an itemized or a total? I wonder.
Get ready to look. I have an original and 2 copies,
Okay. No flash drive?
1 flash drive.
Got it. Well, you can leave it on there for now. You can just send them that one.
And the
Oh, so
bid,
there is a total, I see. Got it.
and the bid amount on this item is $261,000.
That number was 261,000.00.
That's correct.
This bidder was Security Walls LLC for $261,000.00.
Yes. Next bidder on this is the Bowden Group and Associates LLC with a flash drive. There's an original and 2 dupes.
Thank you.
And that's $555,000 and no cents.
And that number was 555,000.00.
Yes,
That was the Bowden Group and Associates LLC for $555,000.00.
yes. Thank you. The next bidder on this contract is Assured Polygraph Service, Inc. I have an original and 2 duplicates with a flash drive.
Thanks.
Just want to check this 1 second. It's got, make sure I'm not missing it. And that total amount on this bid is $72,000 and no cents.
I see a missing comma, but I think I have 720, there should be a comma, 000.00.
That's what I have.
Okay. That bidder was Assured Polygraph Service, Inc. for $720,000.00.
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you. And the last bidder on this contract is Lionheart, that's HEART, Security Protection LLC. I have an original, a USB. Let me make sure. What is this Lionheart? Give me 1 second. I'm sorry, this is not the last bidder on this.
Okay.
Let me correct that. Lionheart Security Protection LLC. I just have an original.
No dupes?
No dupes. I'll read the price, and then I'll give it to you to verify.
Okay.
The price on this item is $56,000.
Okay, that number was 56,000.00, and that is what I see on the original as well. That bidder was Lionheart Security Protection LLC for $56,000.
Yes. And the last bidder on this contract is Kentech
Is it
with a
LLC?
USB.
Is it LLC, Kentech?
Okay, I'm getting ready to read it to you. Kentech Consulting LLC. I'm sorry, Kentech Consulting, Inc. Thank you.
Okay. Sean,
Okay,
I'm
I have
gonna
an
leave the desk
original.
blank, and you can deal with that later. We have an original.
And let's check. And it looks like 2 copies. This has the USB.
Okay, thank you.
I'll just write it on here. And let me read you the price. The price on this bid is $720,000. I'm sorry, yes, 720.
That's what I see too, 720,000.00.
Yes.
And that was Kentech Consulting, Inc. for $720,000.00. And was that our final?
That's our final.
So that was our final of 5 bidders for RFQ 000832, background check services.
Okay.
Up next, for the Bureau of Procurement, we have RFQ 000835. This is for paper cuts, various all sizes, colors, and weights.
Okay, and our first bidder on this item is Peabody Press, Inc.
Itemized? Okay.
It's in here.
Okay. And for folks who can't see who's talking, our colleagues from our other agencies who actually do all the buying are here and sharing with us. This is a requirements contract, so we're not going to see a total.
So we're just going to read the names.
Yep.
So the
Yep.
first one was Peabody Press.
Very good. And we have an original and dupes.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Let me
An
just record that.
original and 2 dupes.
2 duplicates.
And samples. And the other bidder is, make sure that this is it. B.W. Wilson,
Okay.
Paper Company. And it's an ink. So that's B.W. Wilson Paper Company, Inc.
Got it.
And Celeste, I have an original, 2 dupes,
Okay.
and samples.
Okay. And again, for folks following along, we've received bids on this requirements contract. It means we will not have a total to share, but the following vendors have provided their requirements and samples, and those are Peabody Press Incorporated and B.W. Wilson Paper Company Incorporated, and this is in response to RFQ 000835, paper cuts, various, all sizes, colors, and weights. Up next, for procurement, we have RFQ 000837, on-site vehicle washing for fleet vehicles and heavy-duty equipment.
Okay, your first bidder on this one is Primary Detailing Solutions. I have an original with a flash drive and 2 duplicates.
Got it?
This is the original. Give me 1 second, let me fix
And is this one a total?
Give this to Celeste. The total on this bid is $44,279,000.
$44,279. Okay.
$44,279 and no cents.
Got it. And let me just find, is it at the way end or? Okay, I'm just verifying the number against info in the copy. And the copy says, no, it should be B10. Here it is. The copy says 44,279.00. And that bidder was Primary Detailing Solutions for $44,279.00.
Yes.
There you go, Shay.
Perfect. The next bidder on this is Absolute Pressure Cleaning, LLC, doing business as Absolute Fleet Washing. I have an original, 2 dupes, and a flash drive.
Thank you.
And the total price on this is $23,730 and no cents.
That number was 23,730.00.
Yes.
And that bidder was Absolute Pressure Cleaning LLC for $23,730.00.
Correct. And the last bidder on this is P2 Cleaning Services, LLC. I have an original, 2 copies, and a flash drive.
Thank you.
Total amount on this bid is $96,085 and no cents.
And that number was 96,085.00.
Correct.
That bidder was P2 Cleaning Services LLC for $96,085.00. And I think that was our final of 3?
Yes, it is.
For
Thank you.
RFQ 000837, on-site vehicle washing for fleet vehicles and heavy-duty equipment. Up next, for procurement, RFQ 000844, personal care and homemaker services for senior care clients.
Okay, our first bidder on this contract is Nest, that's N-E-S-T, Home Care LLC. I have an original, a flash drive, and 2 copies.
Thank you.
Total bid price on this, $3,348,960 and no cents.
Okay, that number was 3,348,960.00.
Yes.
That bidder was Nest Home Care LLC for $3,348,960.00.
Yes. Our next bidder is Elizabeth Cooney, that's C-O-O-N-E-Y, Personal Care LLC. I have a flash drive. I have 2 copies. And I also have a check.
Oh. Let me record that amount here. Was the other one supposed to have a check? Or a bond?
It didn't.
Okay.
Do you have?
Check amount? The check amount. We have a check amount of $540, and I'm going to record the bank number as well, the check number, sorry. I'm putting those in separate columns, Shalon, so I'm going to mess up your formatting a little, sorry. Okay. Do we usually put the bid number on this? Gonna anyway. Too late, I did it. 844. Okay. There's that. Okay. Sorry, folks, we record the checks so we don't lose track of them. And now we're ready for total?
You 1 minute.
Oh, sure. The name on this check is Elizabeth Cooney Personal Care LLC. And it's made out to Baltimore City.
It's a separate bid, I'm not saying, because it's not, okay, okay, I want to make sure, okay.
We good?
Total amount for Elizabeth Cooney, $2,451,096.00.
Okay, that number was 2,451,096.00.
Yes, that's correct.
That bidder was Elizabeth Cooney Personal Care LLC for $2,451,096.00.
That's correct, with the USB.
Yep, got it. And I'm gonna keep the check here for the moment, so they don't get mixed. And we definitely did not get a check for the other one, right? Okay.
No. I'm gonna double check here in a minute. The next bidder on this contract is Helping as Senior Citizens Thrive, LLC, doing business as Visiting Angels. I have an original, a flash drive, five copies.
5 copies.
Hang on a minute, I know this one.
And a check.
And a check. Hold on. Saying, let me see. Make sure. Give this to Celeste. That's the check.
Okay, we have a check in the amount of $45,612.84. Okay. Got that.
Total amount on this bid is $2,280,000. $641.76.
Okay, that number was 2,280,641.76.
Yes,
Okay, that bidder was Helping Our Senior Citizens Thrive LLC, doing business as Visiting Angels, Hyattsville.
yes.
And that bid amount was $2,280,641.76.
Correct.
And there was a check received with this bid.
Yes. And you have a flash drive.
Yes, got it.
And the last bidder on this should be Bonnie's Care LLC.
I have Bunny's Home Care, is that right?
Oh, I'm sorry, Bonnie's Home Care LLC. Okay, 1 minute. What is this? I have an original. Make sure there's no dupes here. Just an original. I will read the price.
No copies at all?
No,
Oh,
it's a miscellaneous. So I'll read the price and I'll give it to you
Okay.
to verify. $2,930,340.
okay. And no check? Okay. Thank you. Okay, that bid amount was 2,930,340.00. And that bidder, again, was Bunny's Home Care LLC for $2,930,340.00. And I'm doing all the checking because I'm paranoid that there's something hiding in there. Okay, and that was our final of four
Yes.
bidders for RFQ 000844. And up next for the Department of General Services, we have PRJ 000889, Hartford Senior Renovation and Envelope Upgrades. And I'm sad to
And there
share,
no bids were received on this contract.
there have been no bids submitted for PRJ 000889, Hartford Senior Renovation and Envelope Upgrades. And that was our final. That was our final bid to open today. Bid results are usually posted, always posted by close of business, but often much earlier in the afternoon. So as soon as we've verified all of our pieces of paper, we will have these posted on the website for folks to review. Thanks, everyone, for tuning in. Our next Board of Estimates bid opening is September 2nd, 2026, hopefully at noon, unless our board decides to run a little long and delay us just a little bit. But we should see you at noon on September 2nd, and thanks, everyone.